Chapter 1453. The child's eyes widened in despair. However, at that moment, a pair of hands reached out and grabbed each of his hands, pulling him back to the top of the mountain. The mountain was very steep, not allowing the two children to stand side by side. However, their arms grabbed each other and were stuck on the top of the mountain, temporarily saving their lives. Why? Why did you save me? The rescued child looked at the boy's chubby face and asked in confusion. You're my opponent, but not my enemy. The boy looked in the direction of the middle-aged man and said, He's the enemy. Even if I have to kill someone, I have to kill him. The middle-aged man smiled when he heard that. You're right. In theory, I'm your enemy, but not only do you not have the ability to kill me, but your fate is in my hands. If I want you to die, you will die. If I let you live, you will live. Only by killing each other will you have a chance to live. You're right, but I won't let you get what you want. As the boy spoke, he suddenly pulled the other child and made him lie on the top of the mountain. He let go and turned to jump down the cliff. Even if I die, my life will be in my own hands. It's not someone else's turn to control it. The boy opened his arms and fell down the mountain. The child on the top of the mountain was stunned at first. Then, without any hesitation, he leaped up without a word and jumped in the direction where the boy had fallen. Seeing the two children fall down the cliff, the middle-aged man was slightly surprised. Just as the two children were about to fall to the bottom of the valley, their bodies stopped the moment they landed. Their faces were almost touching the rocks on the ground, but they did not touch them in the end. The middle-aged man let go and the two of them landed in the pile of rock. You don't want to be controlled by me, but I want to control your fate. Our game has just begun. The middle-aged man glanced at the child who had fallen first and said, Don't think that you can easily survive with your little tricks. I can give you a chance to live, but whether you can walk out of here alive depends on whether the two of you have the life. If you survive, we'll have a chance to continue this game in the future. With that, the middle-aged man turned around and left, disappearing into the forest. Only the two children were left in the middle of the deep forest and the towering mountains. Are you stupid? Why did you jump down as well? The boy looked at the child from before and asked. From now on, I, Libucio, will share the same life as you, Atienzwa, the child said seriously. In that case, what's yours is also mine? Atienzwa looked at Libucio and said. Yes. Libucio nodded. Since it's all mine, can I change my name? I don't like the name Don't Cry. I haven't liked it for a long time, Atienzwa said. Why? Libucio was a little confused. Not crying feels a little sad. I don't really like it. How about this? Not crying is a smile. I'll call you Li Xiao. In the future, when there's no one else around, I'll call you Li Xiao, Atienzwa said with a smile. Libucio raised his eyebrows and said angrily, I don't like your name either. I'll call you Tianyu from now on. Atienzwa climbed up from the rubble and looked at the distant mountain forest. It's good that the heavens are protecting us. I hope the heavens can bless us. 4 days later, someone found 2 dying children on the mountain path. They were covered in wounds and were being bitten by a pack of wild dogs. They were almost out of shape. One of the children was protecting the other with all his might. His entire back was a bloody mess from being bitten. He did not move until he fainted. Live. Only by living can we have a chance to make the enemy pay. The person who saved them heard one of the children gnashing his teeth as if he was sleep-talking in his sleep. I must swim over. Xiao swam forward with all his might. There was no other thought in his mind. He only knew that he had to go over. The shore that seemed to be shrouded in fog and could not be approached no matter what seemed to be gradually getting closer. The Xing deity watched Zhao's figure disappear into the fog on the other shore and muttered to herself. He really went over. There's finally hope to bring him back. The flowers were like a sea, a boundless sea of flowers. Xiao climbed ashore and knelt among the flowers, gasping for breath. The places where his body touched the flowers quickly regained their vitality. His body, which had been overdrawn, actually recovered to its best state in the blink of an eye. Xiao felt his body brimming with vitality as if he had been reborn. He stopped panting and sized up the flowers with a strange expression. Only then did he discover something strange. The flowers here had no stems or leaves. The flowers grew directly on the ground and covered the entire land. There was no end to them. Everywhere he looked, there were only flowers and flowers. Xiao walked on the sea of flowers and had a strange feeling. It was as if his nerves were connected to the flowers. When he stepped on the flowers, he could actually feel the pain of them being trampled on. This feeling was very strange. It was like he was one with heaven and man, as if he had become one with nature. Perhaps this strange power was working. Xiao seemed to sense something and walked in a direction. After walking for a short while, he saw an old man lying among the flowers with shackles on his body. The old man's hair and beard were all white. His body was bound by shackles. From the material of the shackles, it was obvious that they were made of sacred metal. The old man looked like he had one foot in the grave. Many flowers grew on his body as he hid in the sea of flowers. It looked like he was going to become a part of the land. This kind of scene was incomparably strange. Even Xiao, who was experienced and knowledgeable, shuddered with fear. It was a horrifying experience for a living person to have a parasitic flower on his body. "Who are you?" The old man did not speak, nor did he make any sound. He could not even open his eyes, but Xiao could sense what he was saying. Just like how Xiao could sense the emotions of the flowers, he could also sense the information from the old man's brain through the flowers. "Old man, I'm Li Xiao. You really are here." Xiao squatted down and brushed away the hair and flowers on the old man's face. After carefully looking for a while, he was immediately overjoyed. "Xiao." The old man stretched out his hand with great effort, wanting to touch Xiao's face. Many parts of his arm had already grown flowers, so it was quite difficult for him to move. Xiao quickly held his hand and put it on his face. He continued, "Old man, it was Tianyu who asked me to come to you. Don't worry, we will definitely save you." "Xiao. It really is you." When the old man heard Xiao say the word Tianyu, he was instantly overjoyed. This was because only one person would call in Tianzhua that. The old man struggled to get up, but his body seemed to be mostly paralyzed. He could not stand at all. Xiao wanted to help the old man up, but the old man said, "It's too late. I'm already at the end of my life. If it wasn't for that thing, I would have died a long time ago. Xiao, there's something you have to help me bring to Tianzhua. No matter what, you have to personally give it to him." Chapter 1454. "Old man, don't worry. Tianyu and I have already made a plan. We will save you," Xiao said. "It's too late. As long as I leave the other side, I will die without the help of the red spider lilies," Ouyang said. "How can this be?" Xiao was shocked. "I should have died a long time ago. These red spider lilies allowed me to live until now. But at the same time, I have to endure indescribable pain every moment. If I didn't know that Shaolan and Tianzhua would come looking for me, I would not have wanted to live anymore." Ouyang paused and continued, "Don't say anything. Listen to me. Even if you bring me back, those monsters from the Holy Temple will not let me go. Only by handing me over to them will you have a chance to bring that matter out. Anyway, I am already a dead man. After I die, it will be the same no matter where my useless body ends up. As long as you bring it to Tianzhua, I will be able to die in peace." "Old man, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to bring it out," Xiao said with a sigh. "So, only by giving me to Xing Shun will you have a chance to bring it out," Ouyang said. "What exactly is it?" Xiao asked. In fact, Xiao Luo was very suspicious. The old master had been captured and imprisoned before. What could he have left on him? Even if it was hidden in his flesh, It could not be hidden from an existence like Xing Shun, let alone on his body. Brush my hair, Ouyang said. Xiao reached out and brushed aside his white hair, but he did not find anything inside. Forget about hiding anything, there was not even a flea or dandruff. Perhaps it was because he was on the other side, but other than the flowers, there was not even a speck of dust. Old man, there is nothing here, Xiao said. Cut off the hair on the top of your head, Ouyang continued. Is it here? Xiao touched the white hair on Ouyang head in confusion. More or less there. Ouyang did not explain much. Xiao used his finger as a blade and swept it across the white hair. Ouyang white hair was instantly cut off by his finger. Huh! Xiao realized that there was a strand of hair that was not cut off by his finger radiance. That strand of hair didn't look any different from the other strands of hair. Xiao couldn't see anything different. No matter how he looked at it, it was just an ordinary strand of hair that had originally grown on Ouyang head. It was definitely not transplanted. However, this strand of hair was able to block his finger light. It was clearly not an ordinary strand of hair. Now, Xiao suddenly understood why the Xing god had not discovered the problem with this strand of hair. It was because the Xing god had been too confident. He had thought that he had seen everything clearly, but he had never imagined that there would be a problem with Ouyang strand of hair. See? Pluck it out and keep it well. Bring it to Tianzhua, Ouyang said. Xiao nodded and plucked out the white hair. This strand of hair was extremely tough. When Xiao Luo plucked it, he pulled it out along with the root. Even the hair follicles were pulled out, and drops of red seeped out. However, because of the effect of the flowers, it was quickly repaired. Old master, is there anything else you want to pass on to Tianzhua? Xiao asked again. Tell Tianzhua to take good care of his mother and little Jing. Ouyang owe them too much in this life. If they don't mind, I can reincarnate as their child in my next life. Ouyang sighed softly. How are you repaying a debt? This is collecting a debt, right? Xiao was speechless. Ouyang smiled and said, Be it repaying a debt or collecting a debt, as long as there is fate, even if it is ill-fated, it is better than being strangers. Old master, don't be so tragic. As for you, just wait here. We will come up with a plan later and rescue you, Xiao said. Ouyang shook his head. I've said everything that needs to be said. Those who deserve to die will only suffer endless pain if they continue living. Just help me bring it to Tianzhua. Furthermore, without me covering you, it's impossible for you to bring the hair out. Old master, is there anything else you need me to tell you about this strand of hair? Xiao asked again. There's no need. That strand of hair will naturally have its use in the right hands, Ouyang said. All right then, old master, just bear with it here. Very soon, I will think of a way to rescue you. Xiao put away the hair, put Ouyang down, and prepared to leave. No, without me, those monsters from the holy temple will not let you go. You won't be able to escape their surveillance with that thing, Ouyang said anxiously. I have my ways. Furthermore, that thing is ultimately a worldly possession. Even if you don't have it, you have to keep your life, Xiao said. No, absolutely not. That thing concerns the future of Earth and the lives of billions of people. No matter what, it cannot fall into the hands of the Holy Temple. Only by bringing me back can you gain their trust and have a chance to bring the hair out. You cannot take the risk, Ouyang said anxiously. Xiao looked at Ouyang and did not know what to do. Child, outsiders think that you and Tianzhua are like fire and water. They even suspect that Tianzhua harmed you. However, only I know that you are his best friend. Even if the entire world is against Tianzhua, you will not. Even if it's for Tianzhua's sake, I beg you, take me to the Holy Temple. Ouyang voice trembled. We are not friends, we are rivals. Xiao paused for a moment before saying, If I were to bring you to the Holy Temple, Tianyu would probably hate me for life. Then, are you willing to bear this grudge? Ouyang asked. Old master, you don't even want your life. What's the point of my grudge? Xiao said. Then take me back, Ouyang Ting said firmly. Xiao Qin bowed to Ouyang Ting 3 times before picking up Ouyang Ting's body from the bushes. Old man, let's go. Zhou Wen studied it for several days and thought of a way to conceal the fragrance on his body. However, the invisible temptation didn't change much. He could only restrain it a little, but he couldn't remove it. Now, I finally understand why it's said that the greatest scammers are never the enemies, but those who say it's for your own good, but do such things. Zhou Wen was depressed. If the strange powers on him were all negative effects, he would have long removed them. However, these strange powers were judged to be beneficial to him, so it was very difficult to remove them. Just as he was thinking about what he should do next, Zhou Wen suddenly frowned and used the sky-stealing sun-swapping teleportation method. The coordinates were the companion egg he had left with Tsukuyumi because he sensed that the companion egg had been injured. Chapter 1455. As Zhou Wen used sky-stealing sun-swapping, he wore the dragon-imprisoned armor and gripped the immortal culling sword tightly. With Tsukuyumi's strength, an existence that could threaten her was definitely no ordinary creature. Zhou Wen didn't dare be careless because it might cost him his life. However, when Zhou Wen teleported to the place and saw the situation in front of him, he widened his mouth in shock. He was speechless for a long time. Zhou Wen didn't know what planet this was. It looked very huge, and its gravity was much stronger than Earth's. It also had an atmosphere, but it was clearly different from Earth's. There were rocks everywhere, and between the 2 mountain peaks in front of them, there was actually a stick made of some unknown material. There was a huge exotic beast impaled on the stick. Flames rose into the sky between the 2 mountains. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like the exotic beast was being roasted. However, Zhou Wen had seen the exotic beast before. Its body was like a universe devil ray. Its body was transparent, and there were blue veins circulating in its body. Although Zhou Wen had only seen this creature twice, it had an extremely powerful calamity creature aura. Zhou Wen had a rather deep impression of it. It was definitely not an ordinary man-level calamity creature. Now it was being roasted. Furthermore, he could smell the faint fragrance of meat. Clearly, it was completely dead. Tsukuyumi sat on a rock by the side with one hand supporting her chin. In her other hand, she held the companion egg that Zhou Wen had given her. The companion egg was already damaged. From the nail marks on it, it was obvious that Tsukuyumi had damaged it herself. What's going on? Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement. Eating barbecue. There's no barbecue sauce or alcohol. You should have some, right? Tsukuyumi said with a smile. That companion egg isn't for you to use, Zhou Wen said as he took out the condiments and alcohol he had placed in the chaos space. Tsukuyumi looked at the red wine Zhou Wen took out and shook her head. I don't like red wine. Do you have any sake? I thought all women liked that. Zhou Wen put away the red wine and took out a huge bottle of sake. He also took out the wine flask and wine cup. At the foot of the mountain where the exotic beast was being roasted, Hashiheim sliced off a piece of meat from the exotic beast and placed it on a tray. The translucent meat was like a small river shrimp. After being roasted, the outside was charred and the inside had turned into a milky white color. Although no seasoning had been added, it was already emitting the fragrance of meat and oil. The difference between exotic beast meat and shrimp meat was that there was a lot of fat in the meat. After being roasted, the fat would melt and seep into the tender meat. Not only would it maintain the moisture in the meat, it would also make the meat more fragrant and tender. Hashiheim placed a wooden table between Zhou Wen and Tsukuyumi. She knelt in front of the table and cut open the roasted meat on the plate. As this wasn't ordinary meat, the temperature was extremely high. Hashiheim opened the alcohol flask and poured some sake on it. Immediately, she heard sizzling sounds, as well as the rising steam from the meat and the fragrance of the oil shrinking. When the temperature of the meat dropped to a certain level, Hashiheim began to sprinkle seasoning. After cooking the roasted meat, Hashiheim placed the cups and poured wine for Zhou and Tsukuyumi before waiting by the side. "Thank you for the wine." Tsukuyumi held the moist, jade-like wine cup and covered it with her sleeve. She downed the wine in the cup and smiled at Zhou before placing the cup on the table. "Thank you for the meat." Zhou raised his cup and downed it in one gulp. Hashiheim, who was kneeling in front of the table, picked up the alcohol flask and filled their cups. "Try it and see if it's delicious," Tsukuyumi said. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Zhou was really a little hungry. He took the chopsticks Hashiheim handed him and picked up a piece of roasted meat to put it into his mouth. Zhou had heard that in ancient times, there were immortals who cultivated to a certain level. They didn't need to eat or drink. Zhou felt that it was just a gimmick to scare people. The higher the evolution of a creature's body, the stronger the power it could unleash, and the more energy it needed. It would only eat more. Of course, it wasn't necessarily food. Those immortals might also have higher-level food, such as concentrated essence energy liquid. After all, Zhou didn't have the ability to go without food. Although he could go without food for a long time, it would expend the energy he had accumulated. It wasn't beneficial. When the roasted meat entered his mouth, he bit into it and immediately felt the juices seep out. Mixed with the seasoning, the fragrance of the meat filled Zhou's mouth. Delicious. Zhou chewed a few times and found the meat tender and smooth. It was indescribably delicious. "Then eat more. I can't finish so much." Tsukuyumi pinched the wine cup with her fingers and took a sip. "This meat isn't bad," Zhou praised as he ate. After all, the exotic beast's body was as huge as a mountain. He couldn't eat much even if he went all out. It wasn't even a drop in the ocean, so there was no need to stand on ceremony. Tsukuyumi only watched Zhou eat by the side. She didn't move her chopsticks and occasionally tasted the wine in her cup. Zhou ate 4 to 5 pieces of roasted meat and felt something amiss. A cold air seeped out from his stomach and spread to his limbs. It was as though he had swallowed ice cubes in summer. Why does this meat contain so much primordial qi? Zhou was somewhat surprised to discover that what surged out was essence energy. Furthermore, it was extremely pure essence energy. No, it wasn't as simple as pure. It was a high-level essence energy. Essence energy itself had strange characteristics that were much higher than Zhou's own essence energy. When the essence energy fused into Zhou's body, it affected his body greatly. Zhou could clearly sense that his physique was improving. Zhou was increasingly alarmed. Typically, after dimensional creatures died, most of their essence energy would dissipate. Only a small portion could remain in their corpses. Zhou wanted to ask Tsukuyumi, but it was already too late. The roasted meat he had eaten released a large amount of essence energy as terrifying essence energy swept through his body. All Zhou could do was immediately focus on circulating his essence energy art to guide the essence energy. Otherwise, his body would probably be destroyed by the large amount of essence energy. Due to the influence of the essence energy, Zhou's body turned crystalline like a crystal person. Furthermore, the essence energy was constantly emitting. Tsukuyumi waved her sleeve and Hashiheim immediately flew towards the exotic beast. The 100 ghosts descended at the same time and pounced at the exotic beast's corpse. Under the 100 ghosts gnawing, the exotic beast's flesh and blood rapidly decreased. As for the 100 ghosts, they emitted a strange glow. Tsukuyumi only drank as she looked at Zhou with a smile. It was unknown what she was thinking. Zhou felt that his various qualities had probably reached the limits of the Terragrade. There was really no way to improve them. However, the essence energy continued to fuse with his body, making him feel that a certain quality was still becoming stronger. Chapter 1456. After Zhou completely digested the essence energy, he opened his eyes and realized that Tsukuyumi was still sitting opposite him, looking at him with a smile. Are the flesh and blood of calamity creatures so nutritious? Zhou asked in puzzlement. He had also killed calamity-grade creatures, but he never realized that their flesh and blood were that nutritious. That might not be the case. Tsukuyumi put down her wine glass and said, "Only a portion of mortal creatures can retain most of their energy in their bodies after death. Hellgrade creatures are inevitable." "This fellow is at the Hellgrade?" As Zhou spoke, he turned to look at the spot where the exotic beast was roasted, but he realized that there was no sign of the exotic beast's corpse. The flames below had vanished, leaving only two bare stone mountains. "Have you finished eating?" Zhou asked in surprise. "I don't like eating meat, but the ghosts in my domain like it very much," Tsukuyumi answered. "I never expected companion beasts to be edible. Furthermore, they're so delicious." The image of the great Might Vajra bull surfaced in Zhou mind. He wondered if he could use it to make steak. Tsukuyumi seemed to see through Zhou's thoughts as she said with a smile, "Typical companion beasts are pure energy bodies. They can be used as essence energy crystals, but if you want to eat them, you have to at least reach the mortal stage. Furthermore, those at the mortal stage might not be able to eat them." "Is that so?" Zhou was somewhat disappointed. "Are you full?" Tsukuyumi put down her wine glass and asked. "I'm already full. Thank you." Zhou thanked Tsukuyumi for treating him to meat. It was very likely Hellgrade meat that ordinary people couldn't eat. However, Zhou didn't know that there were differences in Hellgrade meat. The few slices he had weren't ordinary meat. "There's no need to thank me. Follow me if you're full." Tsukuyumi stood up and walked towards the mountain range. "Where are you going?" Zhou asked. "There's a dimensional zone here. I can't handle it myself. You should help me, right?" Tsukuyumi said with a smile. "What kind of dimensional zone is it? Let's study it first. How far have you explored it?" Zhou had just eaten meat, so he couldn't reject her directly. "I've already explored the situation inside. It's just that there's a dimensional creature that's not easy to kill. Your sword should be useful. You just need to help me with your sword," Tsukuyumi said. Zhou felt relieved when he heard Tsukuyumi say that. Since Tsukuyumi was so confident, there shouldn't be any problems. He followed Tsukuyumi deep into the mountain range. There were rocks everywhere and there weren't any signs of life. However, it made sense on second thought. Apart from Earth, Zhou had never heard of any planet with ordinary lifeforms. Even if there were, they were basically dimensional creatures. Tsukuyumi stopped in front of a cave and pointed inside. "This is the entrance to the dimensional zone. The dimensional creatures inside are all stone elemental. You'll deal with the ordinary dimensional creatures. Leave the calamity grade to me. After I control it, use that sword to kill it." Zhou naturally nodded in agreement and followed Tsukuyumi into the cave. In the beginning, he didn't discover any dimensional creatures. When the rocks in the cave came to life and transformed into stone beasts, Zhou realized that the dimensional creatures here were pure stone elemental. These ordinary stone beasts were at the mythical stage at the very least. Occasionally, he could see a terragrade stone beast. Zhou took the opportunity to test out the new bamboo blade. He drew it and slashed. The mythical stone beast's defense was rather powerful, but Zhou didn't feel much strength as the bamboo blade sliced through the stone beast's body. One had to know that the bamboo blade's blade was very thin. Against dimensional creatures like the stone beasts with all sorts of defensive skills, it wasn't the first choice of weapon. However, the new bamboo blade's performance surprised Zhou. A stone beast with a jade-like body pounced forward. It was like an auspicious beast. After its terror transformation, it wasn't invisible, but its body was extremely hard. From the defensive halos on its body, one could tell that it was a dimensional creature that was very good at defensive skills. Zhou originally imagined that it would be difficult for the new bamboo blade to kill such a creature. However, Zhou held the blade and slashed with all his might, slashing off the jade-like beast head. What alloy did Ah Xing add to the bamboo blade? The strength of this bamboo blade is probably comparable to the immortal culling sword. Zhouwen looked at the blade and couldn't help but be surprised that it wasn't damaged at all. That blade isn't bad, Tsukuyomi said as she glanced at the blade in Zhouwen's hand. Even an existence like Tsukuyomi praised it. The quality of the new bamboo blade exceeded Zhouwen's expectations. He knew that it would probably be difficult to return the favor. After slicing open the Terragrade stone beast's body, he discovered a stone egg. Zhouwen took out the stone egg and looked at Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi said indifferently, "That thing is useless to me. Keep it if you want it." Zhouwen didn't stand on ceremony as he put away the companion egg and continued following Tsukuyomi deeper into the cave. Along the way, Zhouwen picked up quite a number of dimensional crystals and companion beasts. However, only one Terragrade companion egg dropped. The stone elemental dimensional creatures here had very strong strength and physique. They had many defensive skills and strength-type skills, but they weren't the type Zhouwen needed. Boom! When they arrived at a huge underground space, the underground rock layer trembled as a stone behemoth crawled out of the crack. Zhouwen took a careful look and realized that it was a huge stone turtle. However, it didn't look like a stone turtle. Its head was covered in horns and there were stone whiskers under its chin. Furthermore, there was a huge stone tablet on its back. This appearance reminded Zhouwen of the legendary dragon's son, Baxia. The dragon had 9 sons, and each one was different. Baxia had the image of a turtle carrying a stone tablet, making him look rather similar to this big fellow. While Zhouwen was still observing the stone beast, the stone tablet on its back lit up. There were many symbols engraved on the stone tablet that Zhouwen couldn't understand. At that moment the symbols emitted a strange glow. Zhouwen hurriedly used the minor heavenly cycle killing array to block the light, but Tsukuyomi didn't move. Soon, Zhouwen realized that the light emitted by the stone tablet wasn't lethal to them, but the rocks that were illuminated by the light were growing strangely. The originally huge underground space was shrinking due to the growth of the rocks. As for the rock passageway they had entered, it was completely blocked by the growing rocks. This fellow's strength is really special, Zhouwen thought. Tsukuyomi's 100 Ghost domain had already been activated as the surroundings seemed to turn dark. Only Tsukuyomi's body emitted a holy light like the bright moon. One by one, the ghosts appeared in the cave and charged at the stone beast. Chapter 1457. Despite the attacks of Crow Tengu, Hashiheim, Amazuma, and all sorts of strange ghosts, the stone beast remained as motionless as a mountain. All sorts of attacks struck it, but it was like a water gun hitting a steel plate. It failed to cause any damage. What a powerful defense! Zhouwen began to worry about whether the immortal culling sword could kill the stone beast. For Tsukuyomi to be able to kill a Hellgrade exotic beast meant that even if she hadn't reached the Hellgrade, she was definitely a top expert at the mortal stage. In her domain, the 100 Ghosts had the strength of a Calamity Grade. However, the Calamity Grade power couldn't injure the stone beast at all. Zhouwen wasn't sure if he could slice through such a defense with the immortal culling sword. The immortal culling sword was very strong, but its true might could only be unleashed if the user was strong enough. Zhouwen could only pull it out and use it in battle. Ignoring the possibility of unleashing its true might, he couldn't even activate its might. It was hard to say if he could kill the Calamity Stone Beast with such a powerful defense. "Are you alright?" Zhouwen couldn't help but ask Tsukuyomi when he saw that the 100 Ghosts' attacks couldn't do a thing to the stone beast. The stone beast's domain power was taking effect. The surrounding space was shrinking. When the entire space was filled with rocks, their movements would be greatly restricted. Even if the rocks couldn't squeeze them to death, breaking through the rocks would clearly slow them down. There was no need to even think about using skills like teleportation. There were rocks everywhere. If they went over in an instant, their bodies would be stuck in the rock. No, it shouldn't be said to be stuck. To be precise, there was him in the rocks, and he had the rocks in him. The situation was even more difficult. I only need to control it. I don't need to kill it. Having a strong defense is useless, Tsukuyomi said calmly. Just as Zhou was about to ask Tsukuyomi how to control the stone beast, he saw a ghost in her domain suddenly fly above the stone beast. The stone beast kept fighting the ghosts and killed quite a number of them. However, in Tsukuyomi's domain, the ghosts had undying bodies. It killed the ghosts again and again, but the ghosts kept reviving and pestering the stone beast, preventing it from attacking its true opponent, Tsukuyomi. The ghost that flew above the stone beast was a hag with a face full of wrinkles. She stretched out her withered, bird-like hands and pulled. Zhou immediately realized that hair-like threads had appeared on the stone beast's body. There were countless threads, and they quickly intertwined together. Soon, they weaved into hair ropes that bound the stone beast's body. The hair rope then formed a net, trapping the stone beast. The stone beast wanted to tear the hair net, but it was like a fish. The more it struggled, the tighter the net became. The hair rope trapped its limbs, making it extremely difficult for it to move. The ghosts were divided into 4 groups, each holding on to one end of the hairnet. No matter which direction the stone beast charged in, there would be a group of ghosts that could pull it back. The stone beast charged left and right, but it was unable to break free. The hairnet was extremely tough and flexible, perfectly restraining creatures like the stone tortoise. More importantly, after being caught by the hairnet, the stone tortoise could no longer use the power of the stone escape to teleport. It had lost its most effective method of teleportation. That's the legendary Kukuri-po, right? Zhou had previously studied the 100 Ghosts. From the hag's abilities, he had roughly guessed her identity. Kukuri-po was the wife of a monk. She had become a demon because of her misconduct. She specialized in collecting the hair of the dead to weave. That's right. The attacks of the 100 Ghosts are just to create time for Kukuri-po. Only with enough ghost hair forming a net can the stone beast be trapped, Tsukuyomi explained. Zhou naturally understood now as he thought to himself. The 100 ghosts in Tsukuyomi's domain have their own characteristics and abilities. Such a calamity domain is clearly more terrifying than the stone beast's single domain power. I wonder what kind of domain power I can condense in the future. If Zhou had to choose, he would definitely prefer Tsukuyomi's domain. It was more practical, and he could use different means to restrain different enemies. However, a domain wasn't something Zhou could decide on himself. Zhou guessed that apart from his talent, bloodline, and essence energy art, the type of domain also depended on what kind of dimensional zone he would use to advance to the Terra grade. However, up to now, Zhou hadn't figured out how to use the dimensional zone's power to advance to the Calamity grade. What are you waiting for? Now let's see if your sword can kill it, Tsukuyomi reminded Zhou when she saw him standing there in a daze. Only then did Zhou snap to his senses and see that the stone beast had been restrained. Its speed wasn't fast among the Calamity grade. Now that it was restrained by the ghost hairnet, it was impossible for it to dodge Zhou's attack. Without any hesitation, Zhou drew his immortal culling sword and slashed at the stone beast's neck with the force of immortal slaying. Clang! The immortal culling sword slashed at its neck, forcefully slicing open a sword mark. Rubble splattered out, causing the stone beast to let out a painful roar. Although the injury wasn't serious to the stone beast, since he could injure it, it was only a matter of time before it was killed. It was just a matter of how many strikes there were. Zhou gripped the immortal culling sword tightly as his figure flickered. He slashed at the stone beast's neck again and again, causing the wound to widen. After all, the stone beast was a dimensional creature that focused on physical attack. It couldn't use stone escape to close the distance, so it could only be ravaged by Zhou. This fellow's defense is really terrifying. If this continues, I'll probably need another 30 to 40 strikes before I can sever its neck. Zhou had already slashed dozens of times, but he had only managed to slice open a small portion of the stone beast's neck. Just as Zhou was about to slash again, he saw the stone beast suddenly roar at the sky. The stone monument on its back actually flew up by itself. Without the stone monument's suppression, the stone beast's strength and speed increased drastically. It shook its body crazily and forcefully through the ghosts that were pulling the ghost hairnet away. They dragged the ghost hairnet into the rocks. The rest of the ghosts that were still holding onto the ghost hairnet couldn't even be pulled back. They slammed into the rocky ground. The stone beast vanished just like that, leaving only the stone monument floating in the air. It emitted a strange glow as the surrounding rocks grew crazily. Be careful! Just as Zhou was searching for the stone beast, Tsukuyumi suddenly teleported to his side and pushed him away. Almost at the same time, the stone beast rushed out from the rocks below. The sharp horn on its head slammed into Tsukuyumi, sending her flying. Bam! Tsukuyumi's body slammed into the rock wall, causing a large portion of it to collapse. The 100 ghosts and the domain vanished as well. Tsukuyumi! Zhou teleported to the rubble pile and swept away the surrounding rubble. He realized that Tsukuyumi was crushed beneath and was on her last breath. He reached out to pull her body and realized that her body was limp as though she had no bones. Her bones had probably been shattered by the stone beast's strike. I can't take it anymore. Before I die, can you fulfill my last wish? Tsukuyumi barely opened her eyes and said with difficulty. Chapter 1458. Don't speak first. I'll help you treat it. Watermark advertisement test. Watermark advertisement test, Zhou said as he prepared to use the power of Human Emperor to heal Tsukuyumi. However, Tsukuyumi reached out to hold Zhou's hand and coughed out blood. It's useless. Cough cough. I know my own situation. Cough cough. Body of calamity. Cough cough. It's not something that can be treated by powers below the calamity grade. Cough cough. Zhou, Tsukuyumi's fingers tried to grab Zhou's hand tightly, but as many of her finger bones were broken, she couldn't grip him tightly. I'm here. Zhou hurriedly held her hand with both hands and transferred the power of Human Emperor over. I never knew what fear was in the past. But now I'm afraid. I'm really afraid. Tsukuyumi's face was pale as her breathing was weak. Her lifeless eyes were filled with fear. You humans have the saying of reincarnation. There can be an afterlife. Cough cough. But creatures like us have no family or friends. We have no connection with this world. Once I die, I will truly vanish into thin air. I won't leave any traces in this world. Cough cough. No one can prove that I existed in this world. It's as though I'm an illusion that doesn't exist. I'm really afraid. I'm afraid. I don't know if I really existed. Cough cough. Or my existence was originally just a meaningless dream. No, you really exist. Zhou felt that Tsukuyumi's vitality was getting weaker and weaker. Even if he injected the power of Human Emperor into her body, it was useless. It was difficult to prevent her vitality from weakening. Zhou, you humans won't understand. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm really afraid. I'm afraid that I'll be completely forgotten by this world. Can you help me leave something in this world? Even if it's the most trivial thing. Tsukuyumi said intermittently. From the looks of it, her mind was beginning to blur. Her eyes seemed like they would close at any moment. Tell me, what should I do? Zhou hurriedly asked. To be able to die in the arms of the person I love. I should be satisfied. Ahem. But I'm still a little greedy. I want more. I want to leave something in your life. Am I too greedy? Tsukuyumi felt as though she was about to suffocate a few times. No, humans are greedy to begin with. Since you are greedy, it means that you are already someone like me, Zhou said with a sigh when he saw that Tsukuyumi's situation wasn't looking good. I'm really happy to hear you say that. Cough cough. Only you are willing to treat me as a person. If possible, I want to die as a person like you, as your wife. Even if it's only in name. Cough cough. Even if there are no traces of my existence anywhere in this world. At the very least, I'm still Mrs. Zhou. As Tsukuyumi spoke, she constantly coughed out blood. This. Zhouwen was slightly taken aback. He never expected the monthly student to make such a request. I'm sorry. I made things difficult for you. I'm ultimately an anomaly. How can I be qualified to be your wife? I'm not worthy of being Mrs. Zhou. Sorry. I shouldn't have said this. Tsukuyumi's voice gradually weakened as her vitality was on the verge of extinction. No. Of course you. Zhouwen felt a little upset. He felt that he shouldn't have let Tsukuyumi die like this as he hugged her tightly. Don't say it. Use your human method. Tell me the answer. It's also the final farewell. Tsukuyumi closed her eyes and pursed her blood-stained lips slightly. Zhouwen had mixed feelings. Seeing Tsukuyumi's pale face, like blood that was about to wither in the rain, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. He lowered his head slightly and was about to press his lips on hers. Roar. Just as Zhouwen lowered his head, for some reason, the stone beast that hadn't charged over suddenly roared and charged over. It descended from the sky like a huge meteor that could destroy a planet. Zhouwen had no choice but to teleport with Tsukuyumi in his arms and dodge the stone beast's attack. I can't take it anymore. Tsukuyumi's breathing quickened as though her throat was about to be clogged. No. Zhouwen hugged Tsukuyumi and reached out to stroke her hair. Roar. The stone beast roared at the sky again, but this time, it didn't pounce over. The stone monument that had been floating in the air suddenly shimmered with runes. Beams of light shot into the rock, and stone pillars protruded from the surrounding stone walls and ground, constantly bombarding Zhouwen from all directions. Zhouwen constantly teleported, but the stone pillars were almost everywhere. Just as Zhouwen appeared, a large number of stone pillars bombarded him, giving him no time to stop. Tsukuyumi said a few times, but because Zhouwen constantly dodged the attacks of the stone beast and stone pillars, she failed to continue. She seemed to be about to die at any moment, but she didn't manage to do so. Zhouwen teleported again. Tsukuyumi, who was about to speak, was interrupted again. Her face flushed red as she suddenly broke free from Zhouwen's embrace. Her body floated in the air as her long hair fluttered in the wind. Her body emitted a terrifying moonlight as her eyes stared at the stone beast like cold moons. Die. Tsukuyumi gritted her teeth in extreme anger. With her angry voice, the calamity domain spread out again. The surroundings turned dark as she stood in the sky like a bright moon. Countless ghosts appeared under the moonlight. Crack, crack. The stone pillars that rushed out were shattered by the ghost. One by one, the ghosts pounced at the stone beast and surrounded it, biting and attacking it. Bam! 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 More than 100 ghosts bombarded the stone beast with all sorts of strange powers, shattering the rocks on its body. Although every ghost's attack wasn't enough to heavily injure the stone beast, the constant bombardment of more than 100 ghosts with all sorts of powers bombarding the stone beast's body turned it into a hornet's nest. Boom! After a few minutes, the stone beast's body exploded and shattered rocks scattered all over the ground. Zhouwen gaped as he looked at Tsukuyumi in a daze. The strength of the ghosts was clearly much stronger than before. Most importantly, Zhouwen really couldn't connect the current Tsukuyumi with the one who was on her last breath a few minutes ago. What's going on? Zhouwen glared at Tsukuyumi and questioned. Tsukuyumi's anger also calmed down because of the stone beast's shattering. When she saw Zhouwen's questioning gaze, her body immediately went limp. Like a weak and frail sick woman, she held her forehead with her hand and fell into Zhouwen's arms. That was the final radiance of a setting sun. I really can't take it this time. Cough cough. Tsukuyumi said as she leaned towards Zhouwen. Then continue with the final radiance of a setting sun. Zhouwen was rendered speechless as he dodged and teleported in front of the stone monument. The stone beast's body exploded and the stone monument fell to the ground. However, the symbols on it were still emitting light, causing the surrounding rocks to continue growing. If he didn't get rid of the stone monument, the entire dimensional zone would soon be blocked by rocks. Chapter 1459. Tsukuyomi twisted her waist and turned around, preventing herself from falling. However, she felt extremely depressed. If the stone beast had broken through the restraints she had set up a little later, she would have succeeded just as she was about to. Now that she had failed, she felt somewhat indignant. Zhou pulled out the immortal culling sword and slashed at the stone monument, leaving a mark on it. However, the mark instantly healed as though it had never been injured. What's engraved on the stone monument is its eternal and indestructible achievements. No power can erase it. Even the power of a zenith heaven golden immortal can't, Tsukuyomi said as she walked over. Zhou raised his sword and slashed at the stone monument again. Upon hearing Tsukuyomi's words, he wanted to retract his sword. However, to his surprise, a force was suddenly released from the immortal culling sword. It pulled his hand and slashed at the stone monument. When the immortal culling sword slashed at the stone monument, the strike that could only leave a sword mark actually split the stone monument into two. What was even stranger was that, after the immortal culling sword slashed over, the words engraved on the stone monument vanished. The stone monument turned into a stone slab. There were no traces of carvings on it, as though the engravings had never existed. The stone tablet that was split in half fell onto the rocks and directly shattered, turning into a pile of rubble. Tsukuyomi looked at the rubble and couldn't help but be taken aback. What's the origin of that sword? Tsukuyomi couldn't help but look at the immortal culling sword. After the slash, the immortal culling sword automatically returned to its sheath. Zhou held the immortal culling sword and was somewhat surprised. He had always treated the immortal culling sword as a cold weapon, a nuclear weapon. He never expected that apart from its destructive power, the immortal culling sword had such a special effect. Furthermore, this effect clearly needed to be triggered. He had slashed so many times previously, but none of them had triggered such a strange effect. Could it be that Tsukuyomi's words just now triggered its power? In that case, the intelligence of the immortal culling sword itself is probably much higher than I imagined, Zhou muttered inwardly. The moment the stone monument collapsed, the surrounding rocks slowly shrank back. The underground space gradually returned to its original state, and the passageway to leave the dimensional zone appeared again. Tsukuyomi walked to the shattered stone beast corpse and picked up a fist-sized piece of crystalline jade. She walked to Zhou side and handed it to him. Unfortunately, there's no companion egg or dimensional crystal. This is the calamitous part of its body. It's often called the source of calamity. It contains immense energy and can enhance the body's special stats. Zhou reached out to take the calamity-transformed jade, looked at it, and threw it back to Tsukuyomi. I was just joking. Are you still angry? Tsukuyomi said as she caught the source of disaster. This should be your food, right? I can still survive without it, but you won't be able to survive without it, Zhou said. Are you concerned about me? Tsukuyomi's eyes were filled with joy. I just don't want to see you die. Zhou turned around and headed for the dimensional zone's exit. Tsukuyomi smiled, put away the source of disaster, and floated after him. Zhou didn't say a word along the way. After leaving the dimensional zone, Tsukuyomi said, there are some beautiful stars nearby. Furthermore, there shouldn't be any other creatures for the time being. Do you want to take a look? There's no need. I still have matters to attend to. Zhou rejected Tsukuyomi and was about to teleport back to Earth. Tsukuyomi was somewhat disappointed, but there was nothing she could do. All she could do was watch Zhou leave and sigh inwardly. Don't destroy it again. This is the last one. Zhou turned around and threw a companion egg with the sky-stealing sun-swapping mark to Tsukuyomi before teleporting back to Earth. Tsukuyomi caught the companion egg and was taken aback. After a while, a smile appeared on her lips as she muttered to herself, "The humans and the ancients really didn't lie to me. Reading is still useful." After Zhou returned to Earth, he took out his phone to look at his stats. Indeed, he realized that his 4 basic stats had reached 99 points. That wasn't all. The spatial attribute among his special stats had also reached 99 points. This was the first time Zhou special stat had reached the maximum value of its current level. The source of disaster actually has such benefit. I have to think of a way to obtain some in the future. Zhou tidied up his companion beasts again. Recently, he had grinded dungeons and obtained quite a number of companion eggs. He had 4 mythical golden battle god halberds and 3 terragrade golden battle gods. Zhou suddenly realized that companion eggs with the words, Golden Battle God, seemed to drop especially easily. The other mythical and terragrade ones weren't that easy to drop. Zhou looked at the stats of the terragrade stone beast companion egg that he had just obtained. Indeed, it was a companion beast that had both strength type and defense type. It was an armor companion, but he didn't lack such companion beasts. The stone beast stats were slightly inferior to imprisoned dragons, so imprisoned dragon was still more useful. Should I sell it? Zhou thought for a moment and decided to give this batch of stone beast eggs to Enxing and let him make the arrangements. For the new bamboo blade to have such an effect, the materials used were definitely not simple. The value of this batch of stone beast companion eggs was far from enough, but such defense-type armor companion beasts could save the lives of many soldiers. What's the use of this metal seed? Don't tell me I have to bury it in the ground? Zhou played with the metal seed companion beast. He had studied it for a long time, but he didn't discover how to make it grow. Thinking of the metal flowers might on Venus, Zhou felt that it was a waste to leave it there. He had to figure out how to advance it. After some thought, he felt that he really needed to plant a metal flower. Therefore, Zhou dug a hole in his yard and buried the metal seed to see if he could plant a metal flower. After placing the metal seed down, Zhou specially poured some water on it, but he didn't discover any reaction. It shouldn't grow that quickly. I'll wait a few days. Zhou turned around and left. He prepared to find Enxing and give him the stone beast companion eggs. To his surprise, just as Zhou walked out of the yard, the metal seed broke out of the ground and flew back to his body, turning back into a tattoo. It doesn't work? Zhou summoned the metal seed again and saw that it was the same as before. There were no changes. Zhou refused to give up as he thought, this thing is a metal seed. Do I have to plant it in metal? Seeing that there wasn't any metal around him, Zhou touched the metal seed to the bamboo blade. He was only giving it a try and didn't expect it to be of any use. However, to his surprise, when the metal seed came into contact with the bamboo blade, it stuck to it like a magnet. Chapter 1460. Zhou hurriedly retracted his hand, hoping to separate the metal seed from the bamboo blade. A precious weapon like the bamboo blade couldn't be used as fertilizer. However, it was already too late. The metal seed seeped into the scabbard like water, preventing Zhou from grabbing it. Don't! Zhou was too deep for tears. If the bamboo blade was really used as fertilizer, he wouldn't even have the heart to cry. After the metal seed fused with the bamboo blade, the grayish-white scabbard rapidly darkened in color. In the blink of an eye, the bamboo blade turned black. Zhou reached out to pull the bamboo blade out of the scabbard, but he realized that he couldn't. After the entire bamboo blade turned black, its color gradually faded. Not long after, it turned pure white again. What's going on now? Just as Zhou was feeling puzzled, the bamboo blade bounced out of his hand. The originally extremely hard bamboo scabbard that couldn't be bent at all was now twisting in the air like noodles. After twisting for a while, the bamboo blade bent into a circle and connected its head to tail, turning into a bamboo hoop. The bamboo hoop became smaller and smaller until it became the size of a ring as it floated in front of Zhou. Zhou extended his finger with a strange expression. The bamboo hoop automatically wrapped itself around his pinky finger. It was the finger he wore in the metal seed ring form. The bamboo blade has become fertilizer just like that? Zhou attempted to retract the ring. Indeed, just like the metal seed from before, it returned to his body and turned into a tattoo. And the tattoo looked like a straight bamboo. Zhou hurriedly took out his phone to take a look. When he saw it, he immediately gaped. Metal bamboo blade. Terror, evolvable, life providence. Jinx's master life soul. Ominous wheel of destiny. Holy blade terror form. Murder blade strength. 99 speed. 99 constitution. 99 essence energy. 99 talent skill. Metal evolution, sanguine calamity, Jinx's master, fusion companion form. Ring this. Zhou nearly spewed out a mouthful of blood. It would have been fine if the bamboo blade had really been absorbed as fertilizer, but this thing had actually fused with the metal seed and turned into a companion beast. What was even more terrifying was that this thing actually had a Jinx's master skill. It was fine if it had a Jinx's master skill, but its life providence was also Jinx's master. This was King double Jinx's master. It was even more ruthless than the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. Taking a step back, ignoring the double Jinxes, this thing's life soul was ominous. No matter how he looked at it, it was an ominous omen. Furthermore, the terror manifestation of the saber didn't seem like a good one. Apart from the holy sword, which looked somewhat decent, this sword was simply a suicide weapon. Who would be tired of living? Bringing it along would definitely be the right choice. Although Zhou had already verified that Jinx's master didn't seem to be of much use against him, he still felt a little apprehensive looking at such a murderous blade. However, something like Jinx's master definitely couldn't be fused. Furthermore, Zhou was used to using bamboo blade, so he couldn't bear to destroy it. The metal seed made bamboo blade a companion beast, and the metal seed also advanced to the terror grade because of bamboo blade. This can be considered a mutual achievement, but these stats... Zhou felt a headache when he looked at the metal bamboo blade stats. However, what was done was done. It was too late to say anything now. All Zhou could do was silently put away bamboo blade. It was best not to use such an ominous saber normally. Who can withstand the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General and the metal bamboo blade? Zhou felt that unless necessary, it was best not to summon the two items at the same time. After putting away the metal bamboo blade, Zhou went to find Enxing. Unfortunately, Enxing wasn't in Overseer's office. Zhou asked a few elders in Overseer's office and learned that Enxing had gone out to handle matters. He didn't know when he would return. Forget it. I'll wait for Enxing to return. Zhou wanted to give the stone beast companion egg to Entienzhua, but the thought of Entienzhua made him feel uncomfortable. It was impossible for him to find Entienzhua. Zhou returned to his yard and took out his phone again. He planned on finding an instance dungeon to browse. This dungeon wasn't something that could be found casually. Zhou's 4 stats had reached their limit. He had to break through to the Calamity grade to continue improving, so advancing to the Calamity grade was imminent. From the looks of it, the only way to advance to the Calamity grade was to rely on dimensional zones. Therefore, Zhou wanted to give it a try and see if he could find a way to advance to the Calamity grade in a dimensional zone. I've entered quite a number of dimensional zones, but I haven't seen anything that can allow the Terror grade to advance to the Calamity grade. Now, I can only try my luck and see if I can find any clues. After some thought, Zhou finally decided to head to the Mount Laojun dungeon. The reason he chose the Mount Laojun dungeon was because the Tao Sutra came from Mount Laojun. Perhaps the opportunity for the Tao Sutra to advance to the Calamity grade was in Mount Laojun. After activating the Mount Laojun dungeon, Zhou felt somewhat uneasy. It wasn't because he was afraid of death. Death in-game was nothing. It was mainly because he had attempted to enter Mount Laojun's Golden Peak in the past, but the outcome wasn't good. Even though he had advanced to the Terror grade, he still felt that Mount Laojun wasn't a place where he could do whatever he wanted. If this Mount Laojun is really the place where Grand Supreme Elderly Lord lives in seclusion, I'm afraid even an apocalypse might not be able to gain an advantage. Zhou entered the dungeon and activated the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder before walking to the Golden Peak. With the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, Zhou wasn't afraid of the taboo power pressure in the Golden Peak. He walked up the stairs and saw jade palaces everywhere. Auspicious clouds surrounded them as immortal cranes danced in the clouds. It was like a paradise on earth. Zhou didn't dare have any thoughts about those immortal cranes. He had come here when he was at the mythical stage and wanted to kill an immortal crane for fun. However, his outcome was naturally extremely tragic. Ever since then, Zhou had no intention of killing immortal cranes. Clouds lingered above Mount Laojun's Golden Peak as Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to walk between the pavilions. The heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder above his head emitted a mysterious glow as it converted the taboo power into essence energy and injected it into the blood-colored avatar's body. Just from the amount of essence energy, one could tell how terrifying the taboo in the Golden Peak was. If not for the protection of the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, Zhou would have long died. From the looks of it, mastering the Tao Sutra is a prerequisite to enter Mount Laojun's Golden Peak. However, I wonder if there's really Grand Supreme Elderly Lord on Mount Laojun, Zhou thought to himself. At that moment, the blood-colored avatar walked to a stone pavilion. Along the way, apart from the immortal cranes, he didn't see any other dimensional creatures. However, there was a dimensional creature in front of the stone pavilion. Chapter 1461. Green Ox. Zhou jumped in fright when he saw the dimensional creature's appearance. In the stone pavilion lay a green ox, looking like it was sleeping soundly. Although he didn't know what level it was, a green ox that could appear on Mount Laojun was indeed a little terrifying. Legend had it that the green ox was Taishang Laojun's mount. Back then, he rode it out of seclusion and left behind an eternal name. Although it was just a mount, it depended on whose mount it was. Taishang Laojun was the ancestor of the creation of the world, the ancestor of chaos, the parent of heaven and earth, the ruler of yin and yang, and the emperor of all gods. His mount was much more terrifying than the average deity. Even at the weakest, it was probably a calamity creature. It wasn't even a low-level calamity at the mortal stage. If this were real life, Zhou would immediately turn around and run as fast as he could. But in-game, he didn't have so many qualms. Let me see if this is Taishang Laojun's green ox. Zhou summoned the 3 golden battle gods and retreated a little. He activated the small heavenly cycle-killing array and held bamboo blade, prepared to fight at any moment. The 3 golden battle gods used their golden pistols and aimed at the sleeping green ox as they fired at it. 3 bullets of different attributes bounced off the green ox's body. Frost, explosion, lightning, and other characteristics were completely ineffective. The golden battle gods kept shooting, but the bullets were like flies. They were completely useless. They couldn't even wake the green ox up. This is way too powerful. Zhou was even more shocked. After all, the golden battle god was a terregrade existence, but it was so useless in front of the green ox. From the looks of it, I'm no match for the green ox at all. I should go elsewhere. Zhou decided to ignore the green ox. Even if it wasn't Taishang Laojun's mount, Zhou wasn't its match with such terrifying strength. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to turn around and walk towards the stone steps on the other side. However, just as the blood-colored avatar turned around, Zhou heard a crack. A green figure that resembled a whip flashed past. Then, the blood-colored avatar was smashed into pieces as the game screen darkened. Holy sh*t, that green ox is so sinister. Only then did Zhou realize that the green ox had definitely woken up long ago, but it continued pretending to be asleep. It was waiting for Zhou to lower his guard and turn to leave before attacking. Although it was a sneak attack, to be able to pierce through the minor heavenly cycle annihilation formation with a single strike, such strength was definitely not an ordinary calamity grade. No matter how strong you are, you must have a weakness. I don't believe I can't kill you. Zhou dripped his blood to revive and entered the Mount Laojun dungeon again. This time, Zhou rushed to the stone pavilion where the green ox was and summoned his companion beast. At the same time, he attacked. He summoned Bamboo Blade and slashed out. This time, Zhou finally saw the green ox raise its head. It looked like an ordinary bull with a huge steel ring on its nose. But, with a flash, the companion beast and the blood-colored avatar were torn apart. Zhou finally saw how the green ox had attacked. It was the tail on its back. This fellow is a little too strong. Can't I even withstand a single tail? Zhou refused to believe it as he entered the dungeon again. He died again and again. It had been a long time since Zhou had died like this. He was helpless against the green ox's attacks. He tried countless times, but at most, he could dodge one tail. A second tail meant certain death. If he used teleportation, the ox's tail would strike him the moment he teleported out, killing him instantly. Even the minor heavenly cycle annihilation formation couldn't defend against it. The ox's tail could be long or short as it pleased. It was like a divine whip. If this really is that green bull, then the ring on its nose might be the Vajra bracelet of the Grand Supreme Old Lord. That thing is an invincible treasure. If I can get my hands on it, then I'll really be able to eat and drink well in the future. But how can I kill the green bull? Zhou tried again and again. Although he had the power of a disqualified that allowed him to spy on the green ox's weakness, the green ox's speed was just too fast. However, the azure ox's speed was too fast. Even if Zhou found an opportunity, he still couldn't dodge the whip of the ox's tail. All Zhou could do was patiently carry out various tests and exchange death for a better understanding of the green ox. It wasn't that Zhou didn't want to circle around the green ox, but that this fellow seemed to be guarding the path to the back. Zhou couldn't circle around it no matter what. As long as he passed by, he would be killed by the green ox even if he used teleportation. What's behind Mount Laojun? The more he couldn't pass, the more Zhou wanted to know what was behind. The premise was to deal with the green ox. Zhou stayed at home for a few days without leaving. Before he could figure out how to kill the green ox, the Soul Reflection Mirror had already completed its evolution. Soul Reflection Mirror, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, God of Immortality Life Soul, Mirror Immortal Wheel of Destiny, Soul Reflection Terraform, Inverse Mirror, S-Grade, Calamity Domain, Mirror World, Human Grade, Strength, 100 Speed, 100 Constitution, 100 Essence Energy, 100 Talent Skill, Soul Cleansing Divine Light, Soul Suppression Divine Light, Soul Annihilation Divine Light, Soul Illumination Divine Light. Companion Form, mirror. This companion beast's stats and abilities are really interesting. Zhou carefully studied the various skills of the Soul Reflection Mirror and realized that this companion beast was indeed interesting. First of all, the Soul Reflection Mirror couldn't kill any creature. The existence of the God of Immortality Life Providence had already severed the possibility of it being a lethal weapon. Furthermore, the Soul Reflection Mirror's skills didn't actually have the ability to kill. The 4 Divine Lights didn't have any lethality against the physical body, but their effects on the soul were very obvious. The Soul Cleansing Divine Light could wash away memories, and the Soul Suppressing Divine Light could suppress the soul, preventing the soul from controlling its body. This could achieve an effect similar to immobilization. The Soul Annihilation Divine Light was the most domineering. It could directly destroy the soul. Once the soul was destroyed, it was basically an empty shell. However, Zhou suspected that the Soul Annihilation Divine Light's ability would conflict with the God of Immortality. The soul reflection divine light was the most special. This divine light didn't harm the soul, but it could pull the other party's soul into the soul reflection mirror. Of course, the strength of the 4 divine lights depended on the strength of the other party's soul and whether they had a soul-type companion beast to defend them. The Terraform's inverse mirror ability could reflect the opponent's attack. The mirror world domain was also a very special domain. It could turn everything nearby into a mirror, as though it was a mirror world. However, Zhouwen was still studying its specific effects. A calamity is a calamity. This ability is too sick. After experimenting for a period of time and figuring out the various abilities of the soul reflection mirror, Zhouwen planned on taking it to Mount Laojun to give it a try. Perhaps with the power of the soul reflection mirror, he could kill the green ox. Chapter 1462. Before heading to Mount Laojun, Zhouwen made a trip to Venus. Although the Venus dimensional zone in reality had been blown up and half of it was gone, the Venus dimensional zone in-game still existed. Everything in the dungeon was intact. In reality, Zhouwen had used Li Mabai's God of Ghost Eyes to lock onto the Calamity Sniper's location. However, after using the God of Ghost Eyes once, they were crippled, turning into 2 jade eyeballs that didn't have any reaction. Zhouwen got Li Xian to return them to Li Mabai. Up to now, he still didn't understand why the Li family would help them so much. Although his relationship with Li Xian was indeed good, Li Mabai's many actions couldn't be explained by this relationship. Ignoring the fact that the God of Ghost Eyes was useless, even if they were still useful, Zhouwen couldn't bring them into the game. Therefore, he still couldn't kill the Calamity Sniper in-game. The Calamity Sniper had the ability to move through metal, and his body could fuse with the metal. It was very difficult for Zhouwen to catch him in the Venus dungeon. However, things were different with the Soul Reflection Mirror. Zhouwen believed that the Soul Reflection Mirror's ability could restrain the Calamity Sniper very well. However, he still needed to test it to know if his thoughts were correct. After entering the Venus dungeon, Zhouwen summoned the Soul Reflection Mirror and shot a white beam at the metal guard. It was true light speed, the standard speed of a Calamity grade. When the white light shone on the metal guard, it immediately revealed a confused look and didn't shoot at Zhouwen again. Unfortunately, the Soul Reflection Mirror can't kill. Zhouwen had no choice but to summon the Golden Battle God to finish off the metal guard. Groups of metal guards appeared as Zhouwen tried the effects of the Soul Suppression Divine Light. A black beam shot out from the mirror, and the metal guards that were illuminated immediately froze as they stood there motionless. However, once the Soul Suppression Divine Light was removed from their bodies, they would immediately regain their mobility. Zhouwen then tried the Soul Annihilation Divine Light. The moment the rainbow beam shot out, the metal guards that were illuminated by the beam suddenly fell to the ground as though they had lost their souls, never to get up again. The effects of the soul-suppressing divine light seemed to be much worse than the soul-annihilating divine light. Its abilities overlap, so there's no need for it to exist. I wonder if the soul-suppressing divine light has other uses, Zhouwen thought. Zhouwen used the Soul Illumination God to illuminate another metal guard. He originally imagined that he was only pulling the soul into the mirror, but to his surprise, the metal guard's entire body had been moved into the mirror. Zhouwen could see the metal guard spinning around in the mirror as though it had been struck by a ghost. Finding it very interesting, Zhouwen used the soul-illuminating divine light to suck the metal guards into the mirror. Soon, the Golden Battle God failed to escape the might of the soul-illuminating divine light and was sucked in. Looking at the Golden War God and the metal guard running around in the mirror world, they looked like ants trapped in a circle. It was very interesting. Wait! Zhouwen looked at the Golden Battle God and metal guards spinning in the mirror world when a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. If I suck dimensional creatures in-game, can I release the dimensional creatures that I suck in reality? Zhouwen wished he could immediately quit the game and give it a try, but on second thought, he decided against it. It wouldn't be too late to try later as he quickly walked into the tunnel. The bullets shot by the Calamity Gunner were blocked by Zhou Wen's minor heavenly cycle-killing array as they circled around him. Zhou Wen moved rapidly as he analyzed the trajectory of the Calamity Gunner's bullets to determine the approximate location of the Calamity Gunner. After locking onto a certain area, Zhou Wen suddenly teleported over. At the same time, he got the Soul Illumination Mirror to activate its Mirror World domain. In an instant, all the nearby metal walls turned into mirrors. The mirrors reflected the blood-colored avatar, but he couldn't see the Soul Illumination Mirror's figure. This was because there were mirrors everywhere. When they reflected each other, it was as though countless blood-colored avatars had appeared. A mirror shattered, and a black metal robot, dragging a large sniper rifle, rushed out of the broken mirror. As all the metal walls had been mirrored, the Calamity Gunner's metal escape lost its effect. He was stuck in the mirrored wall and could only forcefully rush out. It was useless for him to rush out. There were mirrors everywhere. Without being able to use metal escape, the Calamity Gunner's mobility was much weaker. The Soul Illumination Mirror shot out Soul Annihilation Divine Light at the Calamity Gunner, but he quickly dodged it. They were both at the Calamity grade, but the Soul Illumination Mirror's mirror beam wasn't faster than the Calamity Gunner's. Zhou Wen was originally somewhat disappointed, believing that he had to rely on himself to kill the Calamity Gunner. To his surprise, he realized that the blood-colored avatar's Soul Illumination Mirror had vanished in the next second. Soon, the Soul Illumination Mirror appeared in a wall that had transformed into a mirror. It used Soul Annihilation Divine Light at the Calamity Gunner's back. The Calamity Gunner reacted very quickly as he quickly moved and dodged the Soul Annihilation Divine Light. The last time Zhou Wen was able to stab him, he had taken advantage of the moment he was immobilized when he fired. It wasn't that easy to stab him when he wasn't firing. Bam! As the Calamity Gunner moved, he even fired a shot. The bullet flew towards the Soul Illumination Mirror, shattering the mirror formed by the wall. The mirror fragments flew everywhere. Zhou Wen was still worried that the Soul Illumination Mirror would die just like that when he suddenly realized that a Soul Annihilation Divine Light had shot out from the mirror fragments that filled the sky. The Calamity Gunner clearly didn't expect such an unforeseen turn of events. It was too late to react as the rainbow beam shone on him. Zhou Wen clearly saw the Calamity Gunner freeze for a moment, but he didn't fall to the ground like the metal guard. As he roared in pain, he forcefully moved his body and rushed out of the Soul Annihilation Divine Light's range. The Soul Illumination Mirror was like a ghost in the mirror as it moved between different mirrors. From time to time, it would shoot out Soul Annihilation Divine Light from different spots, catching one off guard. In the beginning, the Calamity Gunner could still withstand the Soul Annihilation Divine Light, but later on, the more he was hit by the Soul Annihilation Divine Light, the weaker his resistance became. He looked more and more sluggish. Finally, the Calamity Gunner no longer had the ability to dodge the Soul Annihilation Divine Light. Under its constant illumination, he finally collapsed to the ground. Zhou Wen summoned Bamboo Blade and chopped off the Calamity Gunner's head. The Calamity Gunner's defense wasn't high, so it was much easier than killing Quinyu. With all his might, Immortal Slaying beheaded him. With the Calamity Gunner dead, Zhou Wen wanted to see if he would drop a companion egg when he heard a boom. The Golden Palace's door opened. Chapter 1463. Zhou Wen had never entered the Golden Palace in reality. When he arrived in front of the Golden Palace in reality, even if he succeeded, the metal ball would automatically fly out of the Golden Palace before being moved out. Even the last time was when an energy spewed out of the Golden Palace and injected into the metal ball, causing the Golden Palace to self-destruct. Up to now, no one knew what the Golden Palace looked like. In-game, it clearly wasn't the case. One wouldn't obtain a metal ball before reaching the Golden Palace, nor would there be any energy spewing out. This was the first time the Golden Palace had opened its door in-game, but nothing came out. There was only a resplendent golden light inside. Nothing could be seen. The Calamity Gunner dropped a strength crystal. After feeding it to his companion beast, Zhou didn't hesitate as he walked towards the door. His figure quickly fused into the golden light. Zhou was already prepared for battle as he pushed the minor heavenly cycle-killing array to its limit. He guessed that there was a golden WRM in the Golden Palace, and it wasn't just at the human stage. However, after seeing the situation in front of him, Zhou was taken aback. The huge metal palace was cylindrical in shape. On the circular walls around it, there was a huge golden WRM statue hanging down every few meters. After careful counting, there were a total of 13. All the golden WRMs had their heads down and tails up as they looked at the center of the palace. There was a strange-shaped metal artifact there. It looked like a tripod, but it didn't have a foot. Furthermore, it was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. At the bottom, it was already rather narrow. Just as Zhou was sizing up the strange metal artifact, the door automatically closed. Then, he saw the golden WRM statues come to life. The golden WRMs roared as they charged at Zhou. In midair, they had already transformed into scissors. Zhou hurriedly took out the Soul Illumination Mirror, but it only managed to shine the Soul Annihilation Divine Light on one scissors before the other scissors rushed over. Pop, pop, pop. A few scissors slashed at the Soul Illumination Mirror, shattering it. The destructive power of the scissors was indeed very strong. The Soul Illumination Mirror's defense wasn't considered weak among those at the human stage, but it couldn't even withstand 3 strikes. Zhou knew that summoning other companion beasts was useless, so he circulated the minor heavenly cycle-killing array with all his might. At the same time, he put on the Dragon King armor. The Dragon King armor was transformed from the limitless monster Dragon King. Although its defense was not as strong as the dragon-enslaved armor, it had a very powerful ability. It could combine the power of different creatures. Using the limitless Demon Dragon King's limitless wheel, Zhou could share his strength with the 8 companion beasts. With their strength, it was equivalent to combining 9 forces into one. Unfortunately, the Soul Reflection Mirror had just been shattered. Otherwise, with its power, Zhou minor heavenly cycle-killing array would have become even stronger. Now that Zhou had borrowed the power of 8 Terragrade companion beasts, he had also received a huge boost. The small heavenly cycle-kill array's range had increased significantly. The scissors formed by the golden WRM rushed in front of Zhou and were trapped by the minor heavenly cycle-killing array. They circled around Zhou but failed to injure him. There's hope. Zhou was overjoyed. The scissors blades rushed in one after another. The 13 scissors blades rushed into the minor heavenly cycle-killing array, but they still failed to break through it. From afar, 13 sharp golden beams of light rapidly revolved around Zhou like circles of golden light. My minor heavenly cycle-killing array is the nemesis of such physical offensive weapons. As expected of a skill I develop. In one word, it's powerful. Zhou was somewhat smug. A Terragrade creature could withstand the siege of 13 Calamity-grade creatures without suffering any damage. Anyone would feel smug. Unfortunately, Zhou could only trap them and not kill them. All he could do was watch them charge around in the minor heavenly cycle-killing array. Unfortunately, my golden WRM is still giving birth. Otherwise, I can try killing them. Bamboo Blade is only at the Terragrade after all. I'm afraid it won't be able to gain an advantage in a head-on clash with the Calamity-grade scissors blades. Zhou thought for a moment and ignored the scissors blades. He walked towards the metal artifact in the middle of the hall. Apart from the 13 golden WRMs, there was only one artifact in the hall. Zhou wanted to see if there was anything inside. His perception was very strong, and there was no need to mention truth listener. However, he couldn't sense anything in the metal artifact. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to approach the metal artifact. After taking a few steps, he suddenly saw a strange light flash in the metal artifact. Before Zhou could figure out what had happened, the game screen went black. What was that? Zhou was somewhat depressed. He didn't even know how he had died. Unfortunately, he could only enter the Venus dungeon once a day. Even if Zhou wanted to study it again, he could only wait until tomorrow. He summoned the soul reflection mirror and was even more disappointed when he didn't find the metal guards or golden battle god in it. From the looks of it, the dimensional creatures that are stored in-game in the mirror world can't be brought into the real world. Zhou put away the soul reflection mirror and was about to head to Mount Laojun to take a look when he suddenly heard Xing's voice from outside. "Young master, there's news from Guide City. It said that a large number of breakout creatures have rushed out of Guide Ancient City," Xing said from outside. "Guide Ancient City has broken the seal? What's the situation now?" Zhou expression changed as he hurriedly opened the door and asked Xing. Guide Ancient City was called Ancient Sovereign City in-game. Even the Arch wanted the stone saber there. Zhou didn't dare pull out the stone saber himself. With the stone saber suppressing it, it was impossible for Guide Ancient City to break the seal. Now that a large number of breakout creatures had suddenly appeared, Zhou was afraid that someone had pulled out the stone saber. It didn't matter if it was someone else who had pulled out the stone saber. Zhou was most afraid that the stone saber would land in the Thearcha's hands. The situation isn't good. In the past, there were only some low-level dimensional creatures in Guide Ancient City. Even epic creatures were rare. However, among the dimensional creatures that rushed out this time, there are many mythical creatures. The local garrison can't deal with them at all and are retreating in defeat. The overseer has already sent reinforcements. And Xing explained the general situation. "Ah Xing, help me tell Sislon that I can't have dinner with her tonight. I'll be returning to Guide City." Zhou walked out of his room and wanted to teleport over, but after some hesitation, he decided to find the chick first. There were many skeleton creatures in Guide Ancient City. The chick's phoenix flames were the nemesis of such creatures. "I hope the stone saber is still around." Zhou used his teleportation ability to head to the vicinity of Guide Ancient City. Chapter 1464. Zhou long-distance teleportation still had a certain deviation. He was teleported to a spot about 15 kilometers away from Guide Ancient City. There were a large number of skeleton soldiers wandering around. Upon seeing Zhou appear, dozens of skeleton soldiers nearby rushed over. With a wave of his hand, Zhou killed all the nearby skeleton soldiers before quickly teleporting away. However, the direction he teleported in wasn't Guide Ancient City, but Guide High School, which he had previously studied at. For so many skeleton soldiers to appear here meant that Guide City's situation was probably terrible. Compared to the problem of the stone saber, he was more worried about Yuqiubai's safety. After the former principal left, Yuqiubai had always taken good care of him. If not for Yuqiubai's introduction, he wouldn't have gotten to know Li Xian. Although Ouyang Lan would definitely let him enter Sunset College without teaming up with Li Xian, that wasn't what Zhou wanted. If he wanted to enter, he had to rely on himself. Otherwise, he would rather not go. According to what Zhou knew, Yuqiubai lived in the school's staff dormitory. He had a wife, but he didn't have any children. If he hadn't moved out, Zhou would likely be able to find him once he returned to school. With Zhou speed, traveling 15 kilometers was a blink of an eye. When he arrived at Guide High School, he saw that it had already turned into a battlefield. There were soldiers fighting skeleton soldiers on the street. With the school as a base, the soldiers and the school's teachers were fighting waves of skeleton soldiers and skeleton generals. The surrounding streets were filled with a tidal wave of skeleton soldiers. There were quite a number of skeleton generals, and there were even some skeleton generals that emitted flames. They were all existences at the epic stage. The school's defense line was being pushed back and could collapse at any moment. Zhou saw Yuchiobai at a glance. Yuchiobai was only at the epic stage, but he was riding a goose and constantly shooting arrows in midair. He was engaged in a battle with a skeleton horse with a blood-colored cloak and blood-stained armor. Although it was a battle, Yuchiobai was in fact holding back the general's attention, preventing him from charging towards the school. The general had already reached the mythical stage. This was only a high school, so none of the teachers or reinforcements in the school were his match. The great warrior raised his spear towards the sky, and a blood-colored flame tore through the air like a moon. Yuchiobai desperately controlled the wild goose to dodge the attack of the blood-colored flame. Yuchiobai's body was already riddled with injuries, and the goose beneath him was also injured. He was clearly having a hard time fighting. As he attracted the general's attention, he shouted, "Run! Run from the back door!" The students in the school retreated through the back door under the cover of the soldiers. However, although there were no mythical generals at the back door, there were groups of skeletons. Most of the soldiers and teachers were fighting in front, and only a small number of soldiers were there. They attacked a few times but failed to rush out. There were already many timid girls crying out, and many of the boys were on the verge of breaking down. The soldiers also knew that under such circumstances, it was only a matter of time before the defensive line was breached. If there were no reinforcements, it was estimated that no one would be able to escape alive. But now Guide City was filled with skeletons. They needed reinforcements everywhere, so who could spare the strength to help them? Old Wu, lead Team 2 to the back door and open up a path. Help the students charge out. Led them as far as possible to the administrative district in the east. Captain, we can't hold on any longer. If we leave, do we still want the defensive line? Old Wu, who was covered in blood, shouted as he fought. The defensive line will be breached sooner or later. When that happens, we will all die. We'll hold on for a while. Let them out. Every survivor count. The captain had already used up all his essence gold bullet. He held his companion beast saber and slashed with all his might. If we leave, all of you will be dead. Old Wu refused to retreat. If you don't leave, all of us will be dead. Leave. That's an order. Take the students to the east. They should be able to hold on for a while longer. As long as we last until reinforcements arrive, a few of us will survive. I'm not leaving. If we die together. It doesn't matter if we die sooner or later. Why are we waiting for reinforcements? Who else can reinforce us near Guide City? Old Wu continued fighting as he roared. The captain still wanted to say something, but he opened his blood-stained lips. In the end, he didn't say a word. The strongest military force in the vicinity was in Guide City. Now, even Guide City couldn't fend for themselves, so who could reinforce them? Unless the Luoyang army sent reinforcements, but Luoyang was too far from Guide City. There was no way they could last until the Luoyang army arrived. Captain, I heard that Guide City had a famous general, Zhang Sun. He defended the city without retreating. With no rations or reinforcements, he defended the city to the death. With thousands of soldiers, he repelled tens of thousands of rebel soldiers outside the city. He fought more than 400 bloody battles without being defeated, defending half of Great Tang. Although we aren't as capable as Zhang Sun to be able to die in battle like him on this land, even if we can't be considered heroes, we can still be considered to be following in the footsteps of a hero, right? Old Wu shouted as he fought. The captain said with a tragic smile, "If it were possible, I'd rather none of you be heroes. So what if we die? Who doesn't die? Brothers, we won't be lonely if we have companions on the road." As Old Wu spoke, he saw a defensive line break. A tidal wave of skeletons surged into the school. We're doomed. When the soldiers, teachers, and students saw the skeleton army charge in like wolves and tigers, they knew that they had lost. Their eyes were filled with despair. Uchiyobai let out a long sigh as he looked into the school. Not only were his students there, but his wife was also there. Suddenly, a strange buzzing sound sounded in the sky. It was as though countless bees were flapping their wings, but no one saw any bees. Pop, pop, pop. The horde of skeletons that had charged into the school were instantly shattered by an invisible force that descended from the sky. Large swaths of skeletons were instantly diced to pieces. It wasn't only limited to the school. The tidal wave of skeletons outside were also diced to pieces by the force that descended from the sky. Be it the lowest-level skeleton soldiers or the flaming skeleton combat generals, none of them could withstand a single strike. It was as though an invisible sword rain had enveloped the entire land, instantly destroying all the skeletons as though they were being cleansed of dust. What happened? Everyone watched in a daze as the tidal wave of skeletons was killed. Even the mythical skeleton general was unable to withstand the invisible force. Its body was diced to pieces by the invisible sword beams that descended from the sky. Everyone couldn't help but look up into the sky. They saw a figure standing in the sky. His clothes fluttered in the wind as his black hair fluttered in the wind. The invisible sword beams that cleansed the world like a storm came from him. Zhou. Uchiyobai couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised when he saw the figure. Teacher, I'm late. All the skeletons within Zhou Wen's reach had been killed. The distant skeleton army had yet to rush over, so Zhou Wen came in front of Uchiyobai and said in shame. Chapter 1465. It's good that you're back. Looking at the youth in front of him, Uchiyobai had thousands of things he wanted to say, but he was momentarily at a loss for words. The youth who had gone through so much trouble to leave this place had finally returned. However, he was no longer the same as before. Back then, no one had expected him to have such a day. Teacher, guard the school. Don't go out. I'll be back soon. As Zhou Wen spoke, he summoned 2 golden battle gods in their terror form to guard outside the school while he flew towards the distant skeleton horde. As the golden battle gods had already turned into their terror form, ordinary people couldn't see them at all. The soldiers, teachers, and students only saw Zhou Wen fly into the sky and charge towards the distant skeleton army that was like a tidal wave. Wherever he passed, the skeleton army collapsed like dust that had been washed away by a torrential rain. Zhou Wen used invisible sword beams to form a sword array. As he streaked across the sky, he killed a large number of skeleton creatures. That seems to be Zhou Wen, right? Why is he here? Don't you know? Zhou Wen graduated from our school. Holy sh*t, are you serious? Zhou Wen is from our school? Isn't that obvious? Didn't you hear him call Principal Yu teacher? He used to be Principal Yu's student. In that case, Zhou Wen is our senior. Holy sh*t, that mythical creature seemed to have dropped a companion egg. He didn't even pick it up. There are so many essence crystals and companion eggs outside. They're all over the ground. Talent is really a good thing. Talent allows one to do whatever they want, but I like it. Old Wu had a wrinkled cigarette in his mouth. He lit it and took a deep puff before exhaling. He looked in the direction that Zhou Wen had flown in. Zhou Wen had wiped out the nearby skeleton army, but he still saw skeleton creatures rushing out from Guide Ancient City. He knew that if he didn't resolve the problem in Guide Ancient City, it was useless no matter how many skeletons he killed. Thankfully, he had already wiped out the skeleton creatures. Only a few had escaped. The skeletons that rushed out of Guide Ancient City wouldn't be able to form a new army for the time being. Zhou Wen thought for a moment before flying in the direction of Guide Ancient City to resolve the source. The present Guide Ancient City didn't look any different from when Zhou Wen first entered. However, there were skeleton creatures everywhere. Even the moat was filled with skeletons, as though it was a river that led to hell. Zhou Wen's figure flashed of the sky as large swaths of skeleton creatures were harvested, dropping large numbers of dimensional crystals. Zhou Wen wasn't in the mood to pick up the low-level dimensional crystals and companion eggs as he charged straight for the ancient city's entrance. After rushing into the ancient city, Zhou Wen realized that there were ancient buildings that stretched out like a mountain range. The ancient city was many times larger than before. At a glance, he couldn't see the ends. Zhou Wen originally imagined that the skeleton creatures had left the ancient city, but after entering, he realized that there weren't many skeleton creatures in the ancient city. In fact, most of the skeleton creatures crawled out from underground and the moat outside the city. Strange, why don't I see any skeletons? Zhou. Zhou of me, I, of. One of Ming. Up to now, Zhou Wen hadn't discovered a single creature in the city. Zhou Wen found it odd. All he could do was put on the dragon-imprisoned armor and stick the substitute talisman on him. He maintained the minor heavenly cycle slaughter array outside him to its limits before heading in the direction of the fire god platform. As the ancient city was many times larger, it was unlikely that the fire god platform was still in its original spot. However, the general direction shouldn't be wrong. Zhou Wen swept past the roofs of the ancient buildings. What alarmed him was that the ancient buildings seemed to be enveloped by a mysterious force. Even Truth Listener's ability couldn't hear the commotion inside. There was nothing. Apart from the ancient buildings that resembled palaces, this place seemed to be a dead city. Zhou Wen didn't see anything the entire way. "I've finally found it." Zhou Wen finally discovered the fire god platform. It hadn't changed much. It still looked the same. It wasn't any different from the last time Zhou Wen came. Zhou Wen directly ascended the fire god platform and realized that the stone saber was still inserted in the furnace. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Strange, the stone saber is still here and hasn't been inserted. Why is there such a large-scale restriction breaking in the ancient city? Furthermore, the ancient city itself has undergone a huge change? Zhou Wen was puzzled. The reason Zhou Wen hadn't pulled out the stone saber was firstly because he was afraid that it would destroy Guide City if it was pulled out. Secondly, it was because of the Dharch. However, there was another important reason. Zhou Wen knew that the stone saber could only be pulled out by people who had cultivated the ancient Sovereign Sutra. And the ancient Sovereign Sutra wasn't that easy to gain basic mastery. Furthermore, to pull out the stone saber, the ancient Sovereign Sutra had to be at the mythical stage. Otherwise, the Dharch wouldn't have specially negotiated with him. The ancient Sovereign Sutra wasn't a chi refinement art. It couldn't be improved by piling up resources, so Zhou Wen wasn't too worried that the stone saber would be pulled out. From the looks of it, the stone saber hadn't been pulled out. Just as Zhou Wen was feeling puzzled, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously turned around. In the midst of the ancient buildings, a figure was standing on the roof of an ancient building, staring at him. A humanoid dimensional creature? Zhou Wen's heart tightened. Among dimensional creatures, there weren't many that resembled humans. However, the more humanoid a dimensional creature was, the more terrifying it was. For example, many gods of pantheons were in human form. Although there were some exceptions, Zhou Wen was still relatively careful when he saw a humanoid creature. The dimensional creature on the roof was no different from a human. He was tall and muscular, and his hair was disheveled. He wore an animal hide, and his exposed skin had a healthy wheat-colored appearance. That wasn't the main point. The main point was that Zhou Wen sensed a special aura from him. This aura could only be found on people who cultivated the ancient Sovereign Sutra. However, the other party was a dimensional creature. He actually had the aura of the ancient Sovereign Sutra on him. This was somewhat strange. The dimensional creature was only casually standing on the roof, but it had an aura that looked down on the world. It gave Zhou Wen an extremely ominous feeling. Zhou flicked his finger and the bamboo blade that had transformed into a ring shot out. Like a bent spring, it instantly returned to its straight state. When it landed in Zhou hand, it had already returned to the size of a normal bamboo blade. Zhou held the bamboo blade and stared at the humanoid dimensional creature. The ominous feeling didn't weaken. Chapter 1466. Zhou also took out the immortal culling sword. He held the bamboo blade in one hand and the immortal culling sword in the other as he stared intently at the humanoid dimensional creature. The humanoid dimensional creature also stared at Zhou as it exerted strength in its feet. Instantly, its figure turned blurry as it vanished from Zhou's vision. Zhou was alarmed. Without any hesitation, he used teleportation and headed for the ancient city's exit. The speed was so fast that he couldn't keep up with it. What terrifying speed was this? Just as Zhou teleported out, his heart skipped a beat. He saw the humanoid creature standing in front of him. Its nose was almost touching his nose as its black pupils met Zhou's eyes. Its grayish-white hair fluttered in the wind. The small heavenly cycle-killing array didn't work? Zhou was alarmed as he quickly retreated. He wanted to pull out the bamboo blade and immortal culling sword at the same time. There was only one possibility for it to be able to ignore the small heavenly cycle-killing array. The other party's strength was enough to tear through the void. However, before Zhou could pull out his saber and sword, the humanoid creature pressed down with both hands, forcefully pushing the saber and sword back into their sheaths. At the same time, he turned around and kicked Zhou in the chest. These actions were done in one go. It was so fast that Zhou couldn't react in time despite seeing it move. His body flew out like a cannonball and slammed into the wall. Boom! An ancient building collapsed from Zhou's body. In absolute defense, the dragon-imprisoned armor in front of Zhou's chest had a hole in the shape of a footprint. Zhou's sternum had been fractured by the kick. All his bones seemed to fall apart from the impact. If not for the protection of the dragon-imprisoned armor, all his bones would have shattered. Bam! Zhou endured the injuries on his body and teleported away. Almost at the same time, the building that had already collapsed was blasted apart by a terrifying force. The moment Zhou teleported out, his figure flew left like an immortal. At the same time, an ancient mirror emitted a rainbow beam that shone at the spot where Zhou had teleported out. Indeed, the humanoid creature was already there. At such a close distance, the soul revelation mirror's beam was truly at the speed of light. In theory, the humanoid creature's reaction time was negligible. Despite being in such close proximity, the humanoid creature still reacted. Its figure blurred in Zhou's vision as it dodged the soul annihilation divine light of the soul revealing mirror. Zhou didn't wait for the soul reflection mirror's divine light to stop as he teleported out. He knew that he had really kicked a metal plate this time. To be able to dodge the light of the soul revealing mirror at that distance, one had to be at least a hell-level existence, or even a heaven-level existence. What was even more terrifying was that the other party's strength was the ancient sovereign sutra, a pure physical strength. To be able to cultivate one's physical body to such a level, be it speed or strength, was not something Zhou could match. Bang! Zhou teleported out and wanted to teleport again. The interval between them was less than 1/10 of a second, but in that instant, the humanoid creature grabbed hold of him and punched him in the face. Half of the dragon imprisoning helmet was smashed by the punch. Half of Zhou's face deformed as his body flew to the side. In midair, he didn't have the chance to slam into the wall. The humanoid creature appeared in front of him again and kicked at Zhou's head. Half of Zhou's face deformed. The cheekbones on this side of his face had collapsed, and his head was severely injured. Despite the other party's speed being so fast, Zhou still reacted. He forcefully teleported out in midair. Clang! When Zhou teleported out, the humanoid creature had already thrown a punch at him, giving him no chance to dodge. However, Zhouwen crossed his sword and saber and blocked the humanoid creature's fist. However, the humanoid creature's strength was just too intense. The saber and sword slammed into Zhouwen's chest, sending him flying. He couldn't hold the saber and sword with both hands as bamboo blade and immortal culling sword dropped. Thankfully, Zhouwen hadn't had the time to unsheathe them. Otherwise, the saber and sword would have sliced him apart. Perhaps he would have been split into several pieces. Come out! Zhouwen summoned a golden battle god to shield his back. Indeed, the humanoid creature had already arrived behind him and struck out at the golden battle god. The Terragrade golden battle god was shattered by his palm as the force of the palm continued striking at Zhouwen's back. Using the moment of sacrificing the golden battle god, Zhouwen finally teleported out again. The soul-revealing mirror he had thrown into the air also shot out soul annihilation divine light at the humanoid creature. However, it was useless. His speed was too fast. The soul annihilation divine light couldn't keep up with him. With a flash, the humanoid creature arrived behind the soul-revealing mirror and threw a punch at it. With the strength of his punch, even the soul-revealing mirror probably couldn't withstand it. Thankfully, Zhouwen had expected this and had already retracted the soul-revealing mirror ahead of time. When the punch landed, the soul-revealing mirror transformed into a stream of light and returned to Zhouwen's body. Zhouwen immediately summoned it again. He held the soul-revealing mirror with both hands and fired the soul-revealing divine light in one direction. The 4 divine lights were all at the speed of light. In theory, their speed was the same, but Zhouwen felt that the soul-revealing divine light was clearly faster than the other 3 divine lights. The direction where Zhouwen's soul-revealing mirror emitted the divine light wasn't where the humanoid creature had been standing, but when the divine light shot out, the humanoid creature really appeared there. It's done. Zhouwen was delighted when he saw that he had successfully predicted the location of the humanoid creature's movement. If the soul-revealing divine light could suck the humanoid creature into the soul-revealing mirror, his life would be spared. However, when the soul-revealing divine light landed on the humanoid creature, his figure only paused for a moment before he immediately rushed out of the soul-revealing divine light's range. What the hell is this fellow? Why would such a creature appear in Guide Ancient City? Zhouwen wasn't just about to vomit blood. In fact, blood was seeping out of his mouth, and half his face was a bloody mess. He threw the soul-revealing mirror with his left hand and grabbed the immortal culling sword with his right hand. Almost at the same time, Zhouwen pulled out the immortal culling sword and slashed behind him with immortal slaying. The humanoid creature was indeed there. When he saw Zhouwen's immortal culling sword, he didn't dodge. Instead, he extended a hand and grabbed the immortal culling sword's blade. Kacha! The sword beam shattered like glass as the humanoid creature's palm grabbed the immortal culling sword's blade without suffering any damage. I'm doomed. Just as this thought arose in Zhouwen's mind, he felt an unstoppable force come from the sword hilt. Boom! Zhouwen's body was sent flying and smashed into the ground, shattering the stone slabs. Rock fragments mixed with armor fragments flew up. As for the blood-spewing Zhouwen, his eyes were bloodshot as his body sank, rapidly sinking into the ground. Chapter 1467. As he was smashed into the ground, Zhouwen used the Chaos Egg to protect his body. This was his strongest defensive method. Inside the Chaos Egg, Zhouwen used the space-time theft and slashed out immortal slaying. Bam! The Chaos Egg bounced off the bottom and bounced up. At the same time the Chaos Egg bounced into the air, the power of immortal slaying under the effects of the space-time theft was released from its previous spot and slashed at the spot where the humanoid monster was standing. Even the soul reflection mirror's speed couldn't keep up with the humanoid monster, much less immortal slaying. The humanoid monster's body flashed. Not only did it dodge the power of immortal slaying, but it also appeared above the Chaos Egg. It clenched its fingers into a fist and punched the Chaos Egg. Bam! The Chaos Egg was severely deformed, almost turning into a cone. It slammed into the ground, creating a huge crater. The Chaos Egg wasn't smashed. It rebounded forcefully and bounced crazily in the ancient building. In an instant, the solid essence energy crystals in the Chaos Egg were filled, expanding the Chaos Egg to its limit. Bam! Another punch struck the Chaos Egg, causing it to explode. The essence energy crystals inside exploded like stars in the sky as Zhou Wen's body fell out. Blood spewed out of Zhou Wen's mouth as he was horrified. Even the Chaos Egg had only managed to block 2 punches. With his current damaged body, he probably couldn't even withstand a single strike. If he suffered another punch, even if it wasn't a vital point, he would probably be in a perilous situation. Sigh of the king. If you don't come out, I'll really die. From the looks of it, I can only use that move. Zhou Wen had already predicted the location where the humanoid monster would appear, but in his present state, he couldn't even dodge. Even if he managed to teleport out, he would probably be killed by the humanoid monster the moment he appeared. Instead of dying when the time came, he might as well risk it and use his final killer move. The humanoid monster arrived instantly, so fast that Zhou Wen couldn't see it clearly. Zhou Wen didn't bother looking as he summoned all his companion beasts. Truth Listener, come out! Zhou Wen's will shouted crazily, but Truth Listener remained unmoved in the earring form. It had no intention of coming out. Bam! Bam! In an instant, countless companion beasts were killed in front of the humanoid monster. Thankfully, when Zhou Wen summoned his companion beasts, he deliberately placed companion beasts like the golden battle god halberd in front of him. The main combat pets like Banana Fairy and Demonic Neonate were summoned to the side. Zhou Wen didn't dare hesitate. He bent his legs and wanted to kneel down to force out the sigh of the king, which had been silent all this while. At this critical juncture, he couldn't care less. However, the humanoid monster was too fast. Just as Zhou Wen's knee bent a little, the humanoid monster's fist had already arrived in front of him. Oh no, it's too late. Zhou Wen was alarmed. Although Banana Fairy and the other companion beasts had already attacked the humanoid monster with all their might, Banana Fairy's terrifying Chaos Wind and Torch Dragon's bright Torch Vision World failed to injure him. To the humanoid monster, the chaotic wind was no different from a spring breeze. It could not even stop him for a moment. Just as the blurry fist was about to land on Zhou Wen's face, it suddenly stopped as though something had blocked it. However, there was nothing in front of Zhou Wen. Did that humanoid monster suddenly show benevolence? Or did he suddenly realize that I look like his long-lost father and can't bear to attack me? Zhou Wen saw the monster stop there with the fist hanging in front of him. He didn't continue forward as many thoughts flashed through his mind. Ring. As this thought flashed through Zhou Wen's mind, the attacks of Banana Fairy and the other companion beasts landed on the humanoid monster, but the attacks didn't have much effect. However, a series of strange bells sounded. The humanoid monster suddenly hugged its head as though it was in extreme pain. Zhou Wen was first taken aback before he was overjoyed. He looked up and saw Demonic Neonate holding the heaven-shrouding bell in her hand. She was rapidly shaking it, and the sound waves that emanated from the heaven-shrouding bell spread out like ripples, forming a strange spatial barrier. The 8 senses were unable to penetrate the barrier formed by the heaven-shrouding bell. Banana Fairy, Torch Dragon, Limitless Demon Dragon King, and company's attacks constantly struck the humanoid creature. He didn't dodge either. All he did was hug his head with both hands as his body constantly trembled. He didn't dodge or counterattack. But those attacks were useless against the humanoid monster. Even the soul-revealing mirror's soul annihilation god light only made the humanoid monster let out a roar. It seemed to be in great pain, but it wasn't able to wipe out its soul. Little Neonate, well done. No matter how stupid Zhou Wen was, he could tell that the true power that affected the humanoid monster was the heaven-shrouding bell in Demonic Neonate's hand. Ever since Demonic Neonate obtained the heaven-shrouding bell, she hadn't used it much. In the past, when she encountered powerful creatures, demonic neonate didn't use the heaven-shrouding bell against her. Zhou imagined that the heaven-shrouding bell's strength had weakened in demonic neonate's hands. After all, demonic neonate's level was too low, so it was normal for the heaven-shrouding bell to drop after she absorbed it. He never expected the heaven-shrouding bell to play a role at such an important moment. Little neonate, continue maintaining it. Zhou retracted his companion egg, and only left the soul-revealing mirror and demonic neonate outside. The soul-destruction divine light was still somewhat effective against the humanoid monster. As demonic neonate rang the bell, Zhou retreated towards the ancient city's exit. At the same time, he picked up the immortal culling sword that had flown out of his hand. As Zhou retreated, he observed the humanoid monster. The heaven-shrouding bell's power didn't injure him. What puzzled Zhou was that the heaven-shrouding bell's power wasn't a mental attack, but the humanoid monster looked like it had suffered a mental attack. Strange. The heaven-shrouding bell is clearly a spatial power. Why does it have such an effect? Zhou was puzzled. The soul-revealing mirror was clearly a mental attack, but its effects weren't as good as the heaven-shrouding bell. Although the heaven-shrouding bell was indeed effective, it didn't seem to be able to kill the humanoid monster. Now, Zhou only wished to leave Guide Ancient City and preserve his life. The humanoid monster kept hugging its head and trembling. In the beginning, it would let out a deep roar because of the soul-destruction divine light's power, but behind it, its body kept trembling without making a sound. However, this didn't mean that its vitality had weakened. On the contrary, the humanoid monster didn't show any signs of dying. Instead, its vitality became stronger. Zhou was about to retreat to the door. Just as he was about to summon demonic neonate and the soul-revealing mirror to escape, he suddenly heard a voice. "Wait, child." Zhou's body trembled as he realized that the humanoid monster had stopped trembling. It had straightened its body and was staring at him. The person who spoke was also the humanoid monster. Chapter 1468. Child, don't be afraid. The current me won't hurt you. At least not now, the humanoid monster said faintly as it stood there without any intention of attacking Zhou. Zhou leaned against the door. Although he didn't immediately rush out, he was on high alert. He would immediately rush out if anything went wrong. "Who are you?" Zhou looked at the humanoid monster and asked. He could sense that the humanoid monster was somewhat different from before, but he couldn't tell what was different. "I'm no longer worthy of having a name." The humanoid monster sighed and said, "Child, I don't have much time. I have something to ask you. In this world, are humans still humans? If humans aren't humans, what else can they be?" Zhou asked with a frown. The humanoid monster seemed to understand something as it said in enlightenment, "Are there still humans with pure bloodlines in this world? Aren't I a human with a pure bloodline?" Seeing that the soul reflection mirror was useless against him, Zhou wanted to retract it. "Don't retract that mirror. With it around, I can have more time," the humanoid monster said quickly as it seemed to see through Zhou's thoughts. The heaven-shrouding bell in demonic neonate's heart was still shaking without any intention of stopping. Zhou was slightly taken aback as though he had understood something. He made the soul reflection mirror continue shooting the soul annihilation divine light at the humanoid monster. The humanoid monster sized up Zhou and shook its head. "No, you aren't a pure human. Although I can't sense if you have a dimensional bloodline, pure humans can't break through the limits of heavenly man. As for you, you have long surpassed the limits of heavenly man. What's the limit of heavenly man? Are you referring to advancing to the mythical stage?" Zhou pondered. "Mythical stage? You can put it that way." The humanoid monster thought for a moment before nodding slightly. Then it asked, "Are there any pure-blooded humans in this world?" "Of course. Can you tell me who you are first?" Zhou asked again. "I no longer have the face to have a name." The humanoid monster was still unwilling to speak. He sighed and said, "As long as there are pure-blooded humans, there is still hope. Although the hope is slim, there is still a chance." After a pause, the humanoid monster said, "Child, I don't have much time left. You must remember every word I say. Although you are no longer a pure human, human blood still flows in your body. Remember what I said and tell every human. This concerns the fate of the entire human race. Speak." Zhou Wen sized up the humanoid monster in puzzlement, guessing at its origins and how trustworthy its words were. First, humans must maintain a pure bloodline. No matter what the situation is, they must not fuse with dimensional bloodlines. Otherwise, the entire human race will be doomed. Zhou Wen opened his mouth to say something, but he was interrupted by the humanoid monster. Then, he continued, "Second, kill all the invading dimensional creatures. We can't let them control the land. Third, find a ship with this mark. There's a woman on that ship. Kill her," the humanoid monster said. He stretched out his finger and drew a pattern on the ground. Zhou Wen nearly cried out when he saw the pattern. This was because the pattern drawn by the humanoid monster was a picture of an anchor and a woman's side profile. "The woman you want to kill is the woman in the pattern?" Zhou Wen asked as he pointed at the woman's side profile drawn by the humanoid monster. "Yes." The humanoid monster nodded slightly. "These three things must be done. If any of them are not done, the entire human race might be destroyed." "Why do you have to do these three things? Who is that woman?" Zhou Wen asked with a frown. "It can't be resolved in a few words. I don't have that much time. Next, I will demonstrate the Ancient Sovereign Sutra to you. This is the second half of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra. With this second half, pure humans will have a chance of breaking through the limits of heavenly man. Although it's still extremely slim, there's at least a chance." As the humanoid monster spoke, the power of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra bloomed from its body. One could clearly sense the primordial energy circulating in its body. Everything in the world has its specialties. Tigers have claws and teeth, birds have wings, and fish have scales and gills. However, humans have no specialties. They don't have sharp claws and teeth, wings that allow them to fly, nor do they have the ability to secrete poison. Humans are so out of place in this world, as though they don't belong in this world. As the humanoid monster circulated the Ancient Sovereign Sutra, it continued, "As long as everything in the world evolves to a certain extent, they can easily break through the limits of heavenly man. However, humans are the only ones who can't break through no matter how hard they work. Countless human sages have tried their entire lives, but to no avail. There was once a human sovereign who gained enlightenment and said that the earth is the cage of humans. Humans are trapped here and suffer all sorts of hardship. They will never be able to transcend. They are just prisoners." The power of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra on the humanoid monster became stronger and stronger. It was like the sun emitting a terrifying vitality. Only by surpassing the limits of heavenly man can one escape the suffering of this cage. However, the human body seems to have some kind of shackles or some kind of flaw. Even geniuses are unable to break through the limits of heavenly man by themselves. When the humanoid monster said that, it became spirited. "I used my body to transform into a demon and broke through the limits of heavenly man. Although this body was crippled, and I recovered my human body, I also figured out a method to help my people break through the shackles. I completed the Ancient Sovereign Sutra and obtained a sliver of hope for us humans. You have to remember this technique and spread it to the world. As long as a pure human advances to the mythical stage, he will be the hope of us humans, that—" "Can I interrupt?" Zhou Wen said with a strange expression. "Don't say anything else. Listen to my sutra and sense my realm. Although you can no longer cultivate the Ancient Sovereign Sutra, you will definitely be famous throughout the ages as a preacher of humanity in the future." The humanoid monster followed up by demonstrating the Ancient Sovereign Sutra and reciting its sutras. Zhouwen wanted to tell the humanoid monster that he was a pure-blooded human, but he couldn't interrupt at all. The humanoid monster's strength was unimaginably terrifying. The ancient Sovereign Sutra he performed had a heaven-defying dominance. Zhouwen could even sense the scene of the battle in blood and fire, as well as the destruction of the world. The ancient Sovereign Sutra he recited was something that wasn't on the monument. However, after listening for a while, Zhouwen realized that the supplemental portion of the ancient Sovereign Sutra was clearly different from what he had figured out himself. The ancient Sovereign Sutra only had the portion after the mythical stage. Therefore, Zhouwen's ancient Sovereign Sutra was the path he had taken, and the other party had also taken the same path. The paths they took were completely different. They clearly used the same essence energy art as a foundation, but they developed in two completely different directions. Chapter 1469. Zhouwen quietly watched the humanoid monster's demonstration. Although the humanoid monster's ancient Sovereign Sutra wasn't the same as his, the other party's realm and level were much higher than his. He could still obtain some experience. However, after watching for a while, Zhouwen felt that something was amiss. Although the humanoid monster's ancient Sovereign Sutra was indeed very powerful and high-level, it was too different from Zhouwen's ancient Sovereign Sutra. There wasn't much point in using it as a reference. Zhouwen wanted to ask the question on his mind. Don't speak. Engrave every word I say into your soul. This is the result of generations of human sages sacrificing themselves. You have to pass it down. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. Just remember it. The humanoid monster's expression was solemn as it continued demonstrating the ancient Sovereign Sutra. Zhouwen had no choice but to continue listening as he thought to himself, even if it's useless to me, I can find a human to inherit this essence energy art in the future. Towards the end of the ancient Sovereign Sutra's demonstration, the humanoid creature's aura was so strong that it nearly tore through the sky. Thankfully, this was a dimensional zone. If it were outside, it would probably cause a tremor that spanned thousands of kilometers. However, Zhouwen vaguely felt that with the ancient Sovereign Sutra's demonstration, the humanoid creature's aura gradually began to turn amiss. If it was pure ancient sovereign aura in the beginning, it was almost impossible to tell if he was a human or a dimensional creature. Later on, the dimensional creature aura on his body became more and more obvious. Finally, after the ancient Sovereign Sutra demonstration was over, the humanoid creature stopped. However, the aura on his body continued surging like a raging wave. Have you memorized it? There's not much time left. If there's anything you can't remember, quickly ask. The humanoid creature seemed to be enduring some kind of pain as his voice trembled. I've memorized it, but I have an important question to ask. As Zhouwen spoke, he switched his essence energy art to the ancient Sovereign Sutra to prevent the humanoid creature from interrupting him again. The sun-like ancient sovereign appeared in front of Zhouwen and asked, I've also cultivated the ancient Sovereign Sutra on the stone monument, but the path I took later on was somewhat different from what you just demonstrated. It was even the complete opposite. Can you tell me why? When the humanoid monster heard the first half of the sentence, it wanted to interrupt him and tell him everything that needed to be said as soon as possible. However, when he saw the human emperor projection that Zhouwen had summoned, his eyes widened as he lost control of his emotions and cried out, How is this possible? You raised the ancient Sovereign Sutra to the Terror grade. But I can't sense any dimensional energy from you. This is impossible. This was because Zhouwen's ancient Sovereign Sutra was actually a simulation in the beginning. As long as he didn't switch to the ancient Sovereign Sutra, he wouldn't have the aura of the ancient Sovereign Sutra. Although the humanoid monster had cultivated the ancient Sovereign Sutra to an extremely high realm, it was unable to sense it. When he suddenly saw Zhouwen summon human emperor's shadow, he couldn't believe it. Yes, it hasn't been long since my ancient Sovereign Sutra advanced to the Terror grade, but my ancient Sovereign Sutra has a problem. Any injury inflicted by the ancient Sovereign Sutra's power will rapidly heal. Even an ant can't be killed. Is there any way to resolve this problem? Zhou had always been depressed about this characteristic of the ancient Sovereign Sutra. The ancient Sovereign Sutra augmented his strength greatly, but it was useless if he couldn't kill. The humanoid monster looked at Zhou with a complicated gaze. He was clearly a monster, but now, he looked like he was looking at a monster. Are humans nowadays all like you? How many people have mastered the ancient Sovereign Sutra? How many have relied on the ancient Sovereign Sutra to break through the limits of the heavenly man? The humanoid monster asked with a complicated expression. I've never heard of it. Perhaps there might be, but I don't know. Zhou wasn't sure if there were others who had cultivated the ancient Sovereign Sutra. After all, the stone monument was placed there. Anyone could come and take a look. Who knew, someone might have mastered it. In other words, your ancient Sovereign Sutra was completely self-comprehended. No one guided you? The humanoid monster asked again. No. Zhou thought for a moment and said, Is there a problem? Could it be that my ancient Sovereign Sutra can't injure others because I cultivated it wrongly? The humanoid monster said with a strange expression, the ancient human emperors were emperors among humans. Every generation of emperors was an emperor who was respected by the masses. They were willing to sacrifice everything for humanity. Every generation of emperors had the determination to sacrifice themselves to achieve righteousness. What they wanted was never to kill, but to let humanity live on. With that said, the humanoid monster sighed. However, this path can't be taken. Even human emperors like Swirenshi and Shino, who bet everything for humanity, were unable to break through the limits of the heavenly man. In the end, they had no choice but to sacrifice themselves to become demons and seek other paths. Only then did I cultivate the ancient Sovereign Sutra. The humanoid monster looked deeply at Zhou and human emperor before sighing. If I had known that someone could master the ancient Sovereign Sutra with a pure human body, there would have been no need to take so many detours. That's not right? Since I'm the emperor of humanity, I have to lead humanity to fight against external enemies. If I can't kill the enemy, wouldn't half of the ancient Sovereign Sutra be useless? Zhou still felt that there were some problems with the ancient Sovereign Sutra he cultivated. Emperors are different from thearchs. Thearchs kill, but emperors subdue the enemy without fighting. Killing is just an expedient measure, the worst possible strategy. If I can really tame my opponent and use him for myself, wouldn't that be twice the result with half the effort? Rearing livestock and planting food are all ways to turn enemies into friends. It's many times better than that person who only knows how to kill. How can they be compared? Wrong. It's all wrong. I can't believe that generations of blood, sweat, and tears, and even sacrificing themselves to become demons, went down the wrong path. The humanoid monster's voice gradually became strange, as if it had lost all emotion, becoming cold and emotionless. Go. Live on with your ancient Sovereign Sutra. I'm about to lose control of this body. Remember the 3 things I said? If you can't do it, then don't ever return to ancient Sovereign City. Find a suitable person to pass down the ancient Sovereign Sutra. Until someone can do it, then let him return to ancient Sovereign City. The humanoid monster's eyes turned fiercer as though it had changed into a different person. Although Zhou still had many questions to ask, he was about to lose control. The isolation ability of the heaven shrouding bell could no longer help the humanoid monster resist the control of some power. Farewell. Zhou didn't dare hesitate. He wasn't the humanoid monster's match, so all he could do was flee. At the instant Zhou retracted demonic neonate and the soul reflection mirror, the humanoid monster had completely lost control. Its body vanished violently. Thankfully, Zhou had already used the spatial theft kill to teleport. As he retracted his companion beasts, he had already rushed out of Guide City. The area outside and inside the city were almost two different worlds. Large numbers of skeleton creatures constantly crawled out of the moat outside the city. There was no lack of mythical existences among them. "Come out!" Zhou suddenly shouted after clearing the nearby skeleton creatures with the minor heavenly cycle annihilation array and arriving at an empty spot in the city. Chapter 1470. Zhou waited for a while, but when he didn't see anyone come out, he said, "Tian Tian, I know you're here. Come out." After a while, he saw Tian Tian walk out of a nearby tree. Her head was lowered, and her eyes were evasive like a child who had done something wrong. "You were the one who helped me block that punch, right?" When Zhou saw that Tian Tian was indeed here, he immediately realized that his previous guess was right. Before demonic neonate rang the heaven shrouding bell, and before Zhou could kneel down, the humanoid monster's fist suddenly stopped. It was definitely not a coincidence. After some thought, Zhou realized that Tian Tian was the most likely candidate. "I didn't mean to save you. It was just a coincidence." Yes, it was a coincidence. Tian Tian lowered her head and fiddled with the corner of her clothes, not daring to look up at Zhou. Seeing that Tian Tian was like an introverted child who wasn't good at expressing herself, Zhou couldn't help but feel pity for her as he reached out to rub her hair. This was because Zhou was an introverted person. Even if he was good to others, he wasn't willing to say it out loud. Tian Tian's appearance reminded Zhou of himself back then. Tian Tian was flustered and didn't think too much. When Zhou touched her hair, Tian Tian suddenly recalled that evil people couldn't be touched. They would be turned into gold. "No!" Tian Tian screamed as she retreated, but she knew that it was already too late. She looked at Zhou and was surprised to discover that he was standing there with his hand still hanging in midair. He looked very puzzled, as though he was surprised by Tian Tian's reaction. Are you all right?" Tian Tian realized that Zhou hadn't turned into gold. There wasn't a single bit of metal on his body, much less turning into gold. "I'm fine." Only then did Zhou recall that the people who had turned into gold seemed to be related to Tian Tian. He couldn't help but break out into a cold sweat. "Try touching me again." Tian Tian still couldn't believe that Zhou hadn't turned into gold after touching her. No matter how she looked at it, Zhou was a baddie. He definitely had plenty of sins on him, but she found it unbelievable that Zhou wouldn't turn into gold. "There's no need, right?" Zhou took half a step back. He was afraid that it was just an accident. If he touched her again, it wouldn't be good. "It'll be fine." However, Tian Tian stubbornly walked in front of Zhou and reached out to grab his hand, placing it on her head. Indeed, Zhou showed no signs of turning gold. Not only did he not turn gold, but a mysterious force rapidly healed Zhou's injuries. Such a serious injury, in just a moment, had actually recovered to its original state. There was no longer any trace of injury. Zhou was alarmed, but he also heaved a sigh of relief. He curled his fingers slightly and ruffled Tian Tian's hair. "Thank you for saving me. Tell me what you want. As long as I can get it, I'll definitely send it to you." Tian Tian shook her head and said with a strange expression, "I don't want anything, and I've already violated the rules. Soon, someone will come and take me away. I'm afraid we won't have the chance to meet again." "What rule did I break? Who will take you away? With your abilities, who can take you away if you don't wish to?" Zhou asked in puzzlement. Tian Tian only shook her head and didn't answer Zhou's question. She pushed Zhou's hand away from her head and glared at him. "Don't let me know that you do anything bad again in the future. Otherwise, I definitely won't spare you." With that said, Tian Tian turned to leave. "Wait." Zhou pondered for a moment before calling out to Tian Tian. "What?" Tian Tian turned her head and asked. "These are yours, right?" Zhou took out the candy box and lemon candy and threw them at Tian Tian. "So they're with you. Where did you get them?" Tian caught the candy box and lemon candy and couldn't help but be surprised. Zhou recounted the process of obtaining the candy box and lemon candy. After Tian heard it, she muttered to herself thoughtfully, "I see. So that's how it is. It's no wonder I couldn't find it after searching for so long. She stole it. Now that the item has been returned to its owner, you don't have to worry," Zhou said. "What's there to worry about? I've never been worried." For some reason, Tian suddenly felt a little angry. She threw the candy box and lemon candy at Zhou and said angrily, "Who wants your things? Since you went through so much trouble to obtain them, keep them for yourself." With that said, she vanished without giving Zhou a chance to speak. "Since you came to find these things, why don't you want them?" Zhou really couldn't figure out what Tian was up to. However, since this thing was Tian's, the candy was probably no ordinary candy. Zhou didn't dare use it recklessly, so he put away the candy and the candy box. When Zhou stormed back to the city, he saw that Luoyang's reinforcements had already arrived. They were setting up defenses and gradually controlling the skeleton army near Guide Ancient City. "Young master, the situation is under control now. You don't have to worry." And Xing had personally led reinforcements. It was obvious that Luoyang placed great importance on this matter. "There's a terrifying creature in Guide Ancient City. Don't let anyone enter," Zhou said to Xing. "What creature is it?" And Xing asked. "I don't know either." Zhou didn't know what the humanoid monster was. Perhaps it was human in the past, but now it existed more as a dimensional creature. Up to now, Zhou still hadn't figured out what the 3 conditions he mentioned meant or why there were 3 conditions. "Young master, I'm afraid the area around Guide City isn't a good place to live in. The overseer has the intention of moving the people of Guide City to Luoyang," and Xing whispered. "Why? Isn't the situation under control now?" Zhou frowned. "Young master, you are from Guide City. You should know how many terrifying legends there are in this place. Guide Ancient City is just the beginning. Places like Butterfly Valley will definitely be breached in the future. Ignoring the fact that Guide City's current military strength isn't enough to defend it, if all the mysteries here are breached, I'm afraid we won't be able to defend it even if the entire Luoyang army is mobilized," and Xing said. Zhou obviously knew how terrifying the legends of Guide City were. From the ancient mythological era to the feudal dynasty, this place had once shone brilliantly. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were more or less related to this place. There were also countless famous people. Even someone like Laozi was born in this region. The Butterfly Valley with the primordial crystal mine was also near Guide City. Zhou had always suspected that it was related to Zhuangzhou. Chapter 1471. Should I give up on Guide? Zhou looked at the distant Guide Ancient City as he had some thoughts. Now, humans were at a disadvantage and couldn't gain a foothold in the vicinity. However, as humans continued to grow stronger, places with abundant resources in dimensional zones like Guide City would definitely become a land that the various factions would fight for. Compared to Luoyang, Zhou actually wished to stay in Guide. After all, this was his hometown. It's indeed impossible to defend the entire Guide City now. Is there a way to settle down in a dimensional zone? Zhou kept thinking. However, there weren't any suitable locations in the nearby dimensional zones. Even if Zhou wanted to occupy a dimensional zone, he couldn't find a suitable place. Guide Ancient City was the most suitable, but there was an extremely terrifying existence inside. Even Zhou would die if he entered, much less ordinary people. Seeing that the situation had been stabilized, Zhou didn't stay any longer and headed for school. After Zhou entered the school, he was immediately recognized by the students and the people who had come to seek refuge. However, they didn't dare surround him. All they did was whisper from afar and discuss Zhou. Seeing that there was no threat, Zhou unsummoned the golden battle god that was guarding the area. Just as he was about to find Yu Qiubai, he saw him walk over. "It's quieter over there. Go over and have a seat," Yu Qiubai said comfortingly as he looked at Zhou Wen. Back then, the school's leaders had advised him not to interfere in Zhou Wen's matters to prevent him from offending overseerin. However, despite the immense pressure, he still helped Zhou Wen get into Sunset College. No one expected that the student from back then was now standing at the top of the human pyramid. He had even saved the school from destruction. Even Yu Qiubai himself sometimes wondered if this was a dream, because it was just too beautiful. "Mr. Yu, have some tea." Zhou Wen placed the brewed tea in front of Yu Qiubai, interrupting his thoughts. "It's all thanks to you coming back in time. Otherwise, none of these students would have survived," Yu Qiubai said as he held the teacup. "This is what a student should do." Zhou Wen thought for a moment and asked, "Teacher Yu, Luoyang is preparing to move Guide City's people to Luoyang. What's your take on this? Guide City's dimensional zones are very rich in resources. However, no one can suppress these dimensional zones now. However, as humanity's overall strength increases, it will definitely be a treasure trove in the future. If we can occupy it, the earlier the better," Yu Qiubai said. "Teacher, your thoughts coincide with mine. I have the same thoughts, but I'm all alone now. I don't have anyone under me that I can use. I'm afraid I can't hold my ground," Zhou Wen said. "Now, it's impossible to occupy the entire Guide City even if there are people and food. Furthermore, those dimensional zones are still changing. It's hard to say what will happen in the future. If you want to eat a fatty in one bite, I'm afraid your stomach will explode in the end." After pondering for a moment, Yu Qiubai said, "If you really wish to stay in Guide City, I have a suggestion. You can first occupy a dimensional zone and gain a foothold before slowly developing." "I think so too, but I wonder which dimensional zone is more suitable. Do you have any suggestions?" Zhou Wen really wanted to stay in Guide City. Ignoring everything else, just the humanoid monster and stone saber in Guide Ancient City were worth Zhou Wen staying. "I do have an idea." Yu Qiubai got up and took out a map of Guide City from the bookshelf. Then, he spread it out on the table and pointed at one of the spots. "If you can take down this dimensional zone, you will be able to attack and defend in the future. Even if a powerful enemy invades, you can use the dimensional zone's power to fend them off." Zhou Wen looked at the spot Yu Qiubai was pointing at and saw that it was labeled Sui Huang Mausoleum. Sui Huang Mausoleum? Zhou Wen looked at Yu Qiubai in surprise. Sui Huang Mausoleum was Suirenshi's mausoleum. It was very close to the ancient city, and was originally next to Fire God Platform. Later, after the dimensional zone evolved, Fire God Platform was connected to the ancient city. However, Sui Huang Mausoleum wasn't connected to the ancient city, forming an independent dimensional zone. Although Sui Huang had given humanity a tinder, Fire God Platform wasn't his territory. Fire God Platform was actually the earliest stargazing platform in the East District. It belonged to the consort. The reason why Zhou Wen was surprised was that the dimensional zone known as Sui Huang Mausoleum had become extremely mysterious ever since the dimensional storms. It was said that one couldn't even enter, so how was one to build a base there? That's right. It's Sui Huang Mausoleum. Yu Qiubai laughed heartily when he saw Zhou Wen's puzzled look. "I haven't done much over the years I've been in Guide, but I've studied Sui Huang Mausoleum. Although I can't say that I know it like the back of my hand, I know it very well. If you have any ideas, I can take you in to take a look." "Teacher, you have a way to enter? That's great." Zhou Wen was overjoyed. Sui Huang Mausoleum was beside the ancient city and could be considered the center of Guide City. With this place as a base, it would be convenient for him to develop in the future. Furthermore, it was close to the ancient city. This was what Zhou Wen wanted the most. "All right, I'll take you there." Yu Qiubai smiled and stood up. "Teacher, sorry to trouble you." Zhou Wen hurriedly stood up. "I've lived here for so many years. I don't wish to leave either. It's naturally for the best if I can stay, Yu Qiubai said with a sigh. Zhou followed Yu Qiubai to Sui Huang Mausoleum. On the way, they encountered some scattered skeleton creatures, but Zhou casually killed them. Sui Huang Mausoleum was shrouded in clouds all year round. It was impossible to fly in directly, and no one who dared to fly in ever came out. Although Zhou had spatial powers, he didn't dare to casually teleport in. Strangely, Sui Huang Mausoleum didn't have a door. It was said that there used to be a door, but after it became a dimensional zone, the door disappeared. All one could see were long walls. Even if one circled Sui Huang Mausoleum, one wouldn't be able to find any door to enter. Teacher, how do we enter? Zhou looked at Yu Qiubai. Yu Qiubai said with a smile, Follow me. Zhou followed Yu Qiubai forward, but Yu Qiubai didn't approach Sui Huang Mausoleum. Instead, he arrived in front of an extremely short stone temple. Zhou originally imagined that it was an earth temple, but when he got closer, he realized that it wasn't earth that was consecrated, but a strange-looking beast. The beast was carved from stone. The craftsmanship was very crude, and due to the passage of time, the stone had been severely weathered. From its appearance, it looked like a fox squatting there. Chapter 1472. Yu Qiubai took out the incense he had prepared and lit 3 of them. Then, he handed the remaining 3 to Zhou and said, Offer incense 3 times and you will be teleported into the mausoleum. Offer incense 3 times? Zhou received the incense, but his expression turned odd. He wasn't afraid of such things and was willing to offer incense, but based on his past experience, being offered incense by him didn't end well. You can only enter by offering incense. What if I blow up the stone statue? Zhou hurriedly stopped Yu Qiubai when he saw him about to offer incense. Teacher, let me go first. Zhou was afraid that Yu Qiubai would blow up the stone statue after he entered. When that happened, Yu Qiubai would be trapped inside again. Alright. Although he didn't know why Zhou wanted to go first, Yu Qiubai retreated to the side. Zhou lit the incense and walked to the stone temple. He held the incense with both hands and was about to kowtow to the stone statue. But just as he bent his waist slightly, he heard a boom. The stone statue moved a few feet to the side, revealing a stone staircase that led downward. What's going on? Yu Qiubai had entered Emperor Sui's mausoleum several times, but he had never encountered such a situation. He didn't know that there was a passageway behind the stone statue. Teacher Yu, is this the path to Emperor Sui's mausoleum? Zhou didn't continue bowing and turned to ask Yu Qiubai. I really don't know. When I entered Emperor Sui's mausoleum before, I would enter the mausoleum as though I was riding on the clouds after offering incense. I've never seen these stone steps, Yu Qiubai said hesitantly. Then I'll go in and take a look. Teacher, wait for me outside, Zhou said as he walked into the stone temple and walked down the stone steps. The stone steps weren't wide and could barely fit one person. Furthermore, the passageway was too short. Zhou had to bend his body to walk over. Thankfully, he didn't discover anything dangerous. When Zhou reached the end of the stone steps, he found a pool. Zhou scanned it and knew that the pool was connected to the outside. He dived into the water and quickly emerged from a fountain. This is Emperor Sui's mausoleum? Zhou sized up his surroundings and discovered many strange statues. They were arranged in 2 rows on both sides of the stone path. All of them had strange shapes, and he couldn't tell what creatures they were. Zhou looked at the end of the stone path and saw a huge stone statue. It was a statue of a man holding a torch. Is that the statue of the Sui sovereign? Zhou looked around and realized that although the Sui emperor's tomb was huge, there wasn't a single-dimensional creature inside. The stone statues seemed to be just stone statues. Even if Zhou reached out to touch them, it didn't trigger any changes. How's this place? It's very difficult for outsiders to enter, and there aren't any dimensional creatures inside. The dimensional creatures outside can't enter, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem if it's used for living, Yu Qiubai said as he walked in and sized up his surroundings. I wonder if there will be any unforeseen events in the future, Zhou said as he looked at the stone statues and Swirenchi's statue. Swirenchi is the sovereign of human Tao. Even if there are any unforeseen events, it shouldn't be too dangerous, right? Yu Qiubai said. If it were in the past, Zhou would have had the same thoughts as Yu Qiubai, but ever since he saw the humanoid monster in the ancient city, Zhou didn't think so. Swirenchi was indeed the sovereign of human Tao, but if he were to demonize, it was hard to say if he would harm humans. Furthermore, although Emperor Sui's mausoleum looked safe, there was actually a hidden danger. Where did the people who had barged in go? Zhou had already scanned the entire cemetery several times, but he didn't find a single worm. How strange. Such a huge cemetery is enough to build a city, but there isn't a single dimensional creature. Zhou felt that this place might not be as safe as it looked on the surface. After I discovered the way to enter Emperor Sui's mausoleum, I came in many times to study it, but I didn't find any dimensional creatures. Furthermore, dimensional creatures that come from other dimensional zones rarely approach Emperor Sui's mausoleum, Yu Qiubai explained. Zhou could tell that they had encountered quite a number of skeleton creatures along the way, but they didn't see a single one near Emperor Sui's mausoleum. Let's talk outside. Without discovering any problems, Zhou left Emperor Sui's mausoleum with Yu Qiubai. He planned on searching the vicinity to see if he could find the tiny palm symbol. After exiting the stone tunnel, they arrived in front of the stone temple again. Zhou scanned the stone temple several times, but he didn't find the tiny palm symbol. He then searched the outer walls of Emperor Sui's mausoleum, but he also didn't find the tiny palm symbol. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. Is this Emperor Sui's mausoleum really just a cemetery used to commemorate ancient sages? Although Zhou felt that it wasn't that simple, he really couldn't see any problems. Zhou, what do you think? Yu Qiubai asked Zhou. It does look very suitable for humans to live in. The space is large enough, and the entrance is hidden and difficult to enter. Dimensional creatures don't seem to approach this place, so it's very safe, Zhou said after some thought. If you plan on building a human city here, I believe many people will be willing to stay, Yu Qiubai said. Let me think about it. After Zhou sent Yu Qiubai back, he returned to Emperor Sui's mausoleum alone. He placed a reclining chair and a table under the Sui Emperor statue and rested while observing the situation inside. The chick was also released by Zhou. He had originally brought it here in hopes that it could help, but it was useless in the beginning. Later on, the humanoid monster was too strong, so Zhou didn't dare release it. The chick stood on the table, pecking at the nuts Zhou had placed on the plate. Zhou waited for more than 10 hours without discovering any problems. Suddenly, the chick flapped its wings and flew up. Zhou originally imagined that the chick had been here for too long and wanted to move around, but to his surprise, the chick flew towards the Sui Emperor statue and landed on the torch it was holding. The chick opened its mouth and spat out a blob of phoenix flames. When the phoenix flames touched the torch, the stone torch actually burst into flames. Chick, what are you doing? Just as Zhou was feeling puzzled, he suddenly realized that the entire mausoleum seemed to undergo some strange changes due to the burning torch. Zhou was alarmed as he hurriedly summoned his companion beasts and prepared for battle. However, after waiting for a while, no dimensional creatures appeared in the mausoleum. Instead, the weeds and trees in the mausoleum seemed to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 1473. In the corner of the cemetery there was a wild pear tree. It had just passed its fruiting period, but now it was blooming again, and not long after, it started bearing fruit. All kinds of plants in the cemetery were growing crazily. The weeds that were originally short had now grown to the height of a person, and the entire cemetery was covered in green. Not long after, the wild pear tree bore pears. It had only been half an hour since the beginning, and according to the growth rate of the pears, it would probably be fully ripe in less than an hour. Zhou waited for a while, and sure enough, the pears were ripe. They were yellow and looked very juicy. He reached out to pluck one and took a bite. Instantly, his mouth was filled with sweetness as if he had drunk honey. So sweet! Zhou was surprised and happy. He was happy because the Sui sovereign statue had such power that it could make plants grow rapidly. If he could occupy this place, he would not need to worry about food in the future. He could be self-sufficient, and no one would be able to trap people here to death. It was simply the best place to build a base. He was surprised that this power was not only effective on plants. If humans were also affected by this power, then what humans would face was not rapid growth, but rapid aging. Zhou did not know how many fruits the pears bore in a year. Even if it was twice a year, then in less than an hour, it was very likely that half a year had passed. If this time was converted to humans, how long could humans last? This was just Zhou's guess. Perhaps the power of the Sui sovereign statue would not make animals age, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, there was not a single dimensional creature or animal in the Sui sovereign's tomb. This did not seem to be a coincidence. According to these suspicious points, the power of the Sui sovereign statue was very likely to have an effect on animals, which was why no dimensional creatures dared to stay in the Sui sovereign's tomb. Or in other words, those dimensional creatures were affected by the Sui sovereign statue and died. What was more terrifying was that this power was not as simple as the power of time. If time was accelerated, Zhou would definitely be able to feel it. However, other than the burning vitality that emanated from the torch, he could not feel any negative energy at all. After being affected by the power of blessing, Zhou knew that the scariest power in the world was not necessarily the seemingly vicious power. Instead, some seemingly beneficial power was very likely to be the terrifying killer hidden in the dark. Little bird, extinguish the fire. Zhou shouted at the little bird on top of the Sui sovereign statue. He didn't dare to take the risk. If the ripening effect worked on him as well, he would soon become an old man. When the chick heard Zhou, it opened its mouth and sucked at the torch. The flames on the torch immediately turned into a thin pillar that rushed towards the chick's mouth like a fountain. Moments later, all the flames were devoured by the little bird, the torch in the Sui sovereign statue's hand stopped burning, and the plants in the mausoleum stopped growing. Zhou waited for a while and was pleasantly surprised when he saw that the plants didn't show any abnormalities. They just stopped growing rapidly. Under normal circumstances, after losing the supply of energy, it would overdraft its vitality due to its growth being too barbaric, and then it would rapidly decline. But now, the plants showed no signs of decay, which meant that they were not overdrawn. This was undoubtedly good news. Zhou left Sui sovereign's mausoleum and caught some wild animals. He sent them into the mausoleum and got the chick to light the torch. Zhou didn't dare to stay in Sui sovereign's mausoleum, so he left with the chick. He planned to return in a few days. If the animals died of old age, then Sui sovereign's mausoleum wouldn't be suitable as a human base. Of course, even if it couldn't be used as a human base, the power of Sui sovereign's mausoleum was still very useful. Zhou had already decided to stay in guide. No matter what, he had to control Sui sovereign's mausoleum. After returning to the Sunset Army's temporary command center, Zhou met Sheng and told him that he wanted to stay in Guide City. Young master, with your strength, it won't be a problem to stay anywhere. But have you ever thought that if you are alone, what difference does it make if you stay or not? You are alone, so even if you stay here, Guide City doesn't belong to you, Sheng said. Zhou understood what Sheng meant. If no one else worked for him to defend and plunder the resources here, it wouldn't make a difference if he stayed or not. Even if he didn't stay, he could come whenever he needed. There was no point in staying here. I want to build a human city here. Zhou had already thought it through. There was the stone saber that even the Dharch coveted. There were humanoid monsters, Sway Sovereign's Mausoleum, Butterfly Valley, and other dimensional zones. He didn't know how many dimensional zones had yet to be developed. To build a human city, this was undoubtedly the most suitable place. It might be a little bitter in the beginning, but the value would increase as time went on. If it were just Zhou alone, he had no intention of building a human city of his own. However, the three conditions mentioned by the humanoid monster weren't something he could complete alone. It required the combined efforts of many humans. It was only after leaving the ancient city that Zhou had the idea of building a city. It's not difficult to build a house, but to make those houses into a city, we need people. With Guide City's current disadvantageous environment, how many people will be willing to stay here? And Xing persuaded. I know it's difficult, but I still want to give it a try, Zhou said. Upon hearing Zhou say that, and Xing smiled. Since you have already decided, young master, I won't say anything else. If you need any resources or manpower, just tell me. I'll do my best to get them for you. Thank you, Xing, but this time I want to do it with my own strength. I'll do my best. Although Zhou was very grateful, he still rejected Xing. Alright, but you have to remember that we are family. No matter where you are, the people from the Overseer's office and I will always be worthy of your reliance. If there's anything difficult, don't shoulder it alone, Xing said seriously. Don't worry. If I can't do it, I'll definitely run to Luoyang to get a free meal. If there's really a need, I won't stand on ceremony with you and Sislan, Zhou said with a smile. Xing laughed out loud. Young Master One, how much longer are you going to be at odds with the Overseer? You should tell that to Tianzua. I'm a very easygoing person. I've never been at odds with anyone, nor have I taken certain people to heart, Zhou said seriously. Xing looked at Zhou without a word, but his gaze seemed to be filled with contempt, making Zhou feel uncomfortable. Chapter 1474. Nonsense. Tianzua slammed his palm on the desk, nearly shattering it due to his lack of control. It was obvious that he was in a bad mood. It's not a bad thing for young Master One to stay in Guide City. Guide City's dimensional zones are rich in resources. In the future, it will definitely be an important place for all parties to vie for. If young Master One can successfully gain a foothold there, the benefits you will reap will be thousands of times greater, Xing explained on Zhou behalf. Who doesn't know that Guide City will be one of the most important places in the world in the future? But do you think any of the 6 families would dare occupy that place? Without the corresponding strength, entering the fray too early will only result in becoming cannon fodder for the other factions, Tianzua said coldly. Young Master One isn't an ordinary person. His strength isn't something the 6 families can compare with. Perhaps he can do what others can't and take control of Guide City ahead of time, Xing continued speaking on Zhou behalf. No matter how strong a person is, he's only one person. What's the point of him staying there alone? Tianzua thought nothing of Xing's words. Yu Qiubai has the intention of staying in Guide City. He's lobbying the other teachers and locals to stay. If it really succeeds, it'll be a good starting point. There'll be a chance for development in the future. Xing reported the situation in Guide City in detail to Tianzua. Tianzua snorted coldly. There's no need to wait for the outcome to know that it's impossible. 99% of people won't choose to stay in Guide City. Tianzua spoke with great certainty, as though he was very confident. Xing naturally knew that the chances of success were very low. Even with Zhou reputation, it was useless. most people would still choose to move to Luoyang. It wasn't that people lacked confidence in Zhou Wen's strength, but that everyone knew very well that no matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to stay in the city 24 hours a day to protect them. What ordinary people needed was a stable and orderly society. This was something Zhou Wen couldn't give them at present, but Luoyang had everything. Even if Tianzhua wasn't in Luoyang, Luoyang still had the strength to withstand a large-scale attack from a mutated creature. It had a complete city defense system, the Federation's Sunset Army, and many famous experts in the Federation. As long as the Sunset Army didn't collapse, Luoyang was basically safe. Humans were selfish. No one was willing to gamble with their lives. Therefore, Tianzhua and Xing knew very well that most people wouldn't stay in Guide City. The truth was similar to what they thought. When Yu Qiubai went to work with the teachers, it didn't go smoothly. Although most of the teachers still respected Yu Qiubai, they still rejected him tactfully. Even the school leaders who had a good relationship with Yu Qiubai privately advised him not to joke around with his life and to follow everyone to Luoyang to develop his career. If even the teachers were like that, it was even more impossible for the people from Guide City, who didn't have a good relationship with Yu Qiubai, to stay. Most people had already registered with the Sunset Army and were waiting to be moved to Luoyang. Yu Qiubai was also very anxious, but there was nothing he could do. Guide City was indeed in a terrible situation. Furthermore, they still hadn't confirmed if they could build a human city in Sui Huang's tomb. Therefore, they couldn't use this as a bargaining chip. This was within Zhou Wen's expectations, but he never expected it to be so tragic. Up to now, the number of people willing to stay could be counted on one hand. Humans are indeed realistic. Zhou Wen originally believed that with Yu Qiubai's reputation, he would be able to retain a few hundred people, but he never expected there to be so few. However, Zhou Wen didn't take it to heart. Although he did need people, it wasn't unacceptable if there weren't any. As long as he could establish the city, there would still be a chance to attract other humans in the future. However, it would be a little difficult in the early stages without anyone. Many things would be inconvenient. No matter how strong Zhou Wen was, he wasn't omnipotent. Some things needed professionals to do, and those professionals were what Zhou Wen wanted the most. For example, building a house was fine with Zhou Wen building a wooden house with a stone floor, but a well-designed building with complete functions wasn't something Zhou Wen could handle. And Xing already knew the outcome from the Sunset Army's registration form, but there was nothing he could do. It wasn't just in Xing. The various factions that had long had designs on Guide City knew of this matter. He actually wants to build a human city in Guide City. Zhou Wen sure is daring. Xia Luchuan couldn't help but laugh when he heard the news. Xia Xianyue pondered for a moment and said, "I wonder if this isn't Tianzhua's intention. If it's his intention, then he really made a bad move. Guide City is a good place. The surroundings are like a hotbed of myths and legends. Although there isn't a clear pantheon system, in terms of dimensional zone resources, it's in no way inferior to Jerusalem. In some aspects, it's even more terrifying. However, with humanity's current strength, it's not enough to build a human city in such a place. Intervening too early will only make one a target. The Yin family has already done their best to defend Luoyang. If they want to interfere in Guide City, I'm afraid they will suffer a double loss." Xia Luchuan said, "With my understanding of Tianzhua, that person definitely wouldn't do such a thing. Furthermore, Zhou Wen comes from Guide City, so this is probably his idea." Although Zhou Wen is strong, building a city isn't something that can be completed by a single person. "I wonder what his plans are," Xia Xianyue said with a sigh. Xia Luchuan suddenly retracted his smile and said to Xia Xianyue, "Zhou Wen must be lacking in manpower now. Are you interested in going there to play for a while?" "What do you mean?" Xia Xianyue knew that Xia Luchuan wasn't simply getting her to play. No one wants Guide City now, but they will fight for it in the future. If that punk Zhou really occupies it, we'll lend him a hand when he's in his most dire straits. We won't pay much, but if it succeeds, the future gains might be huge. Just treat it as an investment, Xia Luchuan said. Then I'll go take a look, Xia Xinhua said with a nod after some thought. And Sheng was thinking about how he could help Zhou leave some people behind. Otherwise, it would be too difficult for him, but after some thought, he couldn't come up with a good solution. If they weren't willing to stay, he couldn't force them to stay with a gun, right? How vicious! How vicious! How vicious! When Ensheng heard the ringtone, he knew that it was from Entienzhua. He hurriedly answered the call. Overseer, what can I do for you? Ensheng asked. Entienzhua's voice was emotionless as he said indifferently, recently, an unknown breakout creature has appeared around Luoyang. There's a shortage of manpower. Quickly bring the troops back to provide reinforcements. Bring them all back? Ensheng asked. Do you still want to hold back? Entienzhua snorted coldly. Then what about Guide City? There are still many people who haven't registered. Furthermore, with so many people, it's impossible to take them all at once. Even if we do it in batches, we'll probably have to do it in dozens of batches. Ensheng felt that there was a problem with this matter. They couldn't bring that many people with them. Those who couldn't leave would probably not survive. After all, there were still skeleton creatures rushing out from the ancient city. Now, it was all thanks to their suppression that they could maintain such a situation. What time is it? Are those people more important or Luoyang's safety? Entienzhua said angrily. And Sheng seemed to understand something as he carefully asked, Overseer, what do you mean? Isn't my meaning clear enough? Don't bring a single one. Scram back as fast as possible. If anything happens to Luoyang, I'll chop off your head first, Entienzhua said coldly. Understood. I'll bring the troops back now. I won't bring a single person with me. Let them stay in Guide City. And Sheng wore an odd expression as he thought to himself, Overseer is indeed ruthless. I still have to continue studying. Chapter 1475. Zhou. Bad news. Yu Qiubai anxiously found Zhou. What happened? Zhou looked at Yu Qiubai in puzzlement, unsure what had happened to make him so nervous. There's been a large-scale break-in Luoyang. And Sheng led the troops back to Luoyang to provide reinforcement. Now, the troops have already left Guide City. Yu Qiubai said worriedly. How many people did Ensheng and company take away? Zhou asked after some thought. Because we left in a hurry, we didn't bring anyone with us. After the skeletons lost their suppression, they charged out in large numbers again. With our current strength, it's very difficult to stop all the skeletons from charging out. Yu Qiubai explained the current situation. When Zhou heard that, he knew what had happened. The so-called breakout creatures wreaking havoc in Luoyang was just an excuse, and Sheng had likely made up his mind to keep them here. Teacher, take someone to the school's entrance and set up a signboard. Then, if anyone wishes to enter the school and obtain our protection, get them to sign this contract. Zhou handed a document to Yu Qiubai. Yu Qiubai opened the document and carefully read its content. Then, his expression gradually turned strange. Isn't that a little too inhumane? Yu Qiubai said hesitantly. Since they have already chosen to leave, they naturally have to pay a price if they want to stay. Otherwise, people will only think that we are a place that collects trash in the future. They can come and go as they please. What rules are there to speak of? Zhou said indifferently. All Zhou could do now was use the school as a base and recruit some people. When he found a suitable place, he could begin building his city. Zhou's idea was good, but there were too few people under him who could do things. There were too many people who sought refuge with him. Many of them had entered without taking the initiative to sign a contract with Zhou's people, believing that they could bluff their way through. Zhou also knew that many people had snuck in. It could even be said that less than a tenth of the total number of people had signed a contract. Most of them had snuck in without signing a contract. However, Zhou didn't take it to heart. He only told Yu Qiubai to lecture more and tell those people the consequences of not signing the contract. Zhou got his companion beasts to guard the area near the school as humans from nearby areas constantly came to seek refuge. Most people had no choice but to seek refuge with Zhou. It was impossible to charge from Guide to Luoyang without sufficient strength. All they could do was seek refuge with Zhou. Zhou wasn't in the mood to care about those things. When he arrived at Sui Emperor's tomb again, it had already been 4 days since he released the little animals. In theory, if the power of the torch could really affect them, then they should not be far from death, or should be dead already. Don't die, please don't die. Zhou prayed silently in his heart as he walked deeper into the tomb. If the tiny animals died from the influence of the torch's power, it would be impossible to build a human city here. Zhou could only search for other dimensional zones, and he might not be able to find a suitable one. After entering the Sui Emperor's tomb, Zhou was stunned by what he saw. Not only did the little animals he had put in not die, but they were also alive and healthy. What was even more frightening was that there were many cubs of the little animals in the grass. Zhou was overjoyed. From the looks of it, the power of the Sui Emperor torch was not the acceleration of time, nor would it kill the animals. On the contrary, the vitality emitted by the torch would make the animals stronger and healthier. Let's test a few more times. If there are no accidents, I should be able to start building the city. Zhou watched as the chick sucked away the flames on the torch. He could clearly see that the feathers on the chick seemed to have become more lustrous. Not daring to be careless, Zhou did some more tests. The results showed that the power in Sui Emperor's tomb had a strong life-enhancing effect on plants and animals, but it did not age them. This is somewhat similar to my power of Renhuang, Yi Futian said. Zhou suspected that the ancient Sovereign Sutra was very likely created by the Sui Emperor. His original intention was similar to the ancient Sovereign Sutra that Zhou had comprehended. However, because no one could take this path, they took another path. Zhou took the opportunity to study the Sui Emperor statue. Ordinary flames couldn't ignite the torch. The torch looked like it was carved from stone and had no fuel. Ordinary flames naturally couldn't ignite the stone. However, when the chick's phoenix flames touched the torch would immediately ignite. However, no matter how long it burned, it wouldn't damage the stone torch. Moreover, the chick was very interested in the phoenix flames after the torch burned. Every time Zhou asked it to suck away the flames, the chick would be very excited. Zhou used a few flame abilities, but he couldn't ignite the torch. He was still unwilling to give up, so he switched to the ancient Sovereign Sutra. The human sovereign that looked like the sun appeared in front of Zhou. As soon as the human sovereign appeared, Zhou immediately noticed something strange. The Sui Emperor's statue that was originally motionless was now overflowing with vitality. When the chick used its phoenix flames to ignite the torch, only the torch emitted vitality and flames. The Sui Emperor statue's body didn't have any changes. But now, the Sui Emperor statue's body actually began to emit vitality. Although it wasn't as strong as before, it made Zhou a little happy. With a thought, the human sovereign reached out and pressed the stone torch in the Sui Emperor statue's hand. The torch that couldn't be ignited by ordinary flames started burning the moment it touched the human sovereign. Not only the torch, but the entire Sui Emperor statue started burning as if gasoline was poured on it. The flames and vitality on the Sui Emperor's body were transmitted to the human sovereign at the same time. It made the already dazzling human sovereign even more dazzling. Zhou could clearly feel that the ancient Sovereign Sutra in his body was circulating crazily. The surrounding vitality kept surging into his body. Boom! A deafening sound suddenly entered Zhou's ears. The burning Sui Emperor statue actually moved. The Sui Emperor's statue that was made of stone slowly lifted its legs and stood up from the stone throne. The vitality on his body was getting stronger and stronger, making it hard to see his body clearly. Especially that pair of eyes, it was like 2 million-watt searchlights, staring at Zhou Wen and the human sovereign. Chapter 1476. Zhou Wen's heart skipped a beat. He tried to teleport away from the Sui sovereign statue's fiery light, but the speed of the fiery light was too fast for him to dodge. Before he could even teleport away, the fiery light had already shone on him. Zhou Wen rarely drank, nor did he have the experience of getting high from drinking. However, when the flames shone on him, it made him feel like he was high from drinking. Boom! In the entire Sui Emperor tomb, the statues began to spew out flames. The flames here were very strange. Although they were hot, they didn't hurt anyone. Endless flames gathered towards Zhou Wen and human emperor. The ancient sovereign sutra in Zhou Wen's body seemed to circulate uncontrollably. As the flames surged in, Zhou Wen sensed that the ancient sovereign sutra and human emperor were crazily absorbing the fire powers from Sui Emperor tomb. Could it be? Zhou Wen was alarmed and delighted when he sensed human emperor's transformation. The ancient sovereign sutra had already reached the terror grade. If it could improve further, it would definitely be a calamity. Human emperor's sun-like body had already turned into a blob of magma after absorbing a large amount of flames. His body was no longer limited to a shadow state, but was becoming more corporeal. As the ancient sovereign sutra circulated, and he absorbed a large amount of flames, Zhou Wen vaguely understood something. Previously, the humanoid monster had once demonstrated the calamity-grade ancient sovereign sutra. However, his ancient sovereign sutra was different from the ancient sovereign sutra that Zhou Wen had comprehended, so there wasn't much reference value. However, the power of fire in Sui Emperor tomb had similar attributes to Zhou Wen's ancient sovereign sutra, but it wasn't completely the same. It had its own uniqueness. However, due to the similar attributes, Zhou Wen's ancient sovereign sutra was perfectly compatible with the power of fire. It easily resonated with it. Now, Zhou Wen vaguely understood that to use the power of dimensional zones to raise his essence energy art, he didn't need to use any special methods. All he needed to do was find a dimensional zone that matched his essence energy art. However, this didn't mean that finding such a dimensional zone was considered a success. There were strong and weak essence energy arts, and there were also strong and weak dimensional zones. It was also a fire elemental dimensional zone. It was unknown how many fire elemental dimensional zones there were in the Federation's 4 regions, but not every dimensional zone could truly help a terror grade advance to a calamity. There was another key point. Zhou Wen didn't know what to call an existence like the human emperor statue, but only by finding such an item and using an essence energy art to resonate with it could he use the dimensional zone's power to advance to the calamity stage. At this time, the Sui Emperor's tomb was filled with bonfires that rose high into the sky. From the outside, it looked like a huge burial mound made of flames. However, inside the tomb, the plants that were affected by the Sui sovereign's fire and grew rapidly were also burning. Soon, they were burned into ashes, and they didn't grow any faster because of the strong life force in the fire. After observing everything, Zhou Wen came to a realization. To the humans, the Sui sovereign's invention of the wood drilling technique brought light and fire to the humans, but to the plants it was a devastating blow. If you look at a problem from a different angle, what's good may not necessarily be good. With Zhou Wen's enlightenment, the flames in Sui Emperor's tomb spewed out even more violently as they surged towards Zhou Wen and human emperor. Yu Qiubai was filled with enthusiasm. Previously, when he tried to persuade those people to stay, all of them ignored him. Some even rejected him. These were all good. There were also those with poor manners who nearly pointed at Yu Qiubai's nose and cursed. But in just a few days, The people who had cursed at him were crying and begging him to stay. The change was so fast that Yu Qiubai found it unbelievable. However, this also gave Yu Qiubai hope. With Sui Emperor's tomb and so many people, with Zhou presiding over it, it wasn't impossible for Guide City to be rebuilt. However, due to the large number of people, the school could no longer accommodate them. Even the vicinity of the school was filled with people. Now that the weather wasn't too cold, they could temporarily stay outside. However, once the weather turned bad, it would be difficult for the skeleton army to survive even if they couldn't charge in. Furthermore, with so many people, food, lodging, and transportation were all problems. It was best to quickly resolve the problem of the base. With a base, people could do their own work to maintain order. Thankfully, Yu Qiubai was already the school's principal. He was previously in charge of many things in the school. The teachers and school leaders immediately returned to Yu Qiubai's leadership. With their help, Yu Qiubai was able to maintain order for the time being. After making the arrangements, Yu Qiubai went to Sui Emperor's tomb to look for Zhou. He wanted to discuss with Zhou if he could allow a group of people to enter Sui Emperor's tomb to carry out the preliminary construction work. Yu Qiubai arrived at Sui Emperor's tomb. Before he reached the stone temple, he saw the Sui Emperor's tomb that resembled a flaming tombstone. What's going on? Did something happen in Sui Emperor's tomb? Yu Qiubai was alarmed. Zhou was still in Sui Emperor's tomb. If something were to happen to him, everyone in Guide City would be doomed. Yu Qiubai turned and sprinted towards the stone temple. He wanted to see what was going on. If Zhou needed help, he might be able to do something. But before Yu Qiubai reached the stone temple, he heard a loud rumble coming from the direction of Sui Emperor's tomb. He turned around and saw the walls of Sui Emperor's tomb collapsing. The flames within the walls had also disappeared. In the past, one could only see the walls and mist when looking at Sui Emperor's tomb from the outside. But now one could see everything within with a single glance. The scene inside shocked Yu Qiubai. The tomb that was originally filled with all kinds of grass and plants was now a scorched land. There was no longer any signs of life. Furthermore, the stone statues in the mausoleum had all been burnt to a crisp. Even the statue of the Sui sovereign had disappeared, leaving behind only a pile of rubble. Only Zhou stood unscathed in the mausoleum. It's over. Yu Qiubai was overjoyed when he saw that Zhou was fine. But when he saw the state of Sui Emperor's tomb, his face turned ashen. He originally wanted to build a human city in Sui Emperor's tomb, but now that the tomb was in such a state, there was naturally no hope. He didn't know if he could find another suitable dimensional zone. Even if he could find one in the future, there were so many people waiting outside the school. Furthermore, they were constantly harassed by the skeleton army. God knew how many people would be able to last until then. Yu Qiubai felt helpless. Just as he was about to check on Zhou, he suddenly saw Zhou's body emit a radiance that resembled the sun. Chapter 1477. Although Zhou knew that the birth of every calamity-grade creature would be accompanied by a heavenly calamity, he never expected that the advancement of the ancient Sovereign Sutra to a calamity would destroy the Sui Emperor tomb dimensional zone. At the instant the ancient Sovereign Sutra advanced to a calamity, Human Emperor automatically fused with Zhou, causing his entire body to emit light and heat. He was like the sun in spring, bringing warmth to the world, but it wasn't too hot. Under the illumination of Zhou's radiance, sprouts emerged from the ashes of the Sui Emperor tomb that had been reduced to a charred ruin. In just moments the sprouts grew into all sorts of plants. There were weeds that were more than a meter tall, and there were saplings that constantly grew into towering trees. There were also flowers that bloomed. In that short period of time, the cemetery that had been reduced to a scorched earth was now like a paradise for plants. Yu Qiubai stood outside, staring blankly at the oasis in front of him. The plants inside grew lusher. It was completely unimaginable that it had been a scorched earth just moments ago. Zhou, are you alright? Yuchiobai felt extremely odd. He was somewhat worried that something had happened to Zhou. Yuchiobai had heard of some stories in the past, such as a whale crash. The death of a whale would give many lives in the sea a chance to survive. There were also many similar records in myth. For example, after Pangu split the heavens and earth apart, all living things could only have a chance to grow after the death of an expert. Now that all living things were growing here, Yuchiobai was truly afraid that something had happened to Zhou. He worriedly rushed into the forest, searching for Zhou as he constantly called out his name. Yuchiobai squeezed through the grass and trees and rushed a few hundred meters before a circular clearing finally appeared in front of him. As for Zhou, he stood there, his body emitting a sun-like glow. He didn't look human at all. Zhou, Zhou. Yuchiobai called out a few times, but he didn't receive a response from Zhou. However, he suddenly felt something amiss with his body. He wasn't young anymore. Although he couldn't be considered old, he wasn't young either. In addition to the previous battle and his recent busy schedule, it was normal for his body to feel exhausted. But now, he felt as if his whole body was full of energy, like when he had just woken up when he was young, as if he had endless energy. Even the residual pain from the previous battle had unknowingly disappeared. It was as if you had healed yourself. Just as Yuchiobai was feeling astonished, he saw the light in front of him dim. Zhou had already returned to his original form and was looking at him. "Mr. Yu, why are you here?" Zhou was first given a fright when he saw that it was Yuchiobai. Only when he saw that Yuchiobai was fine did he relax. The ancient Sovereign Sutra had just advanced to the Calamity grade and formed a domain. He did not know if this Calamity grade domain would cause any harm to humans, so he was really shocked when he saw Yuchiobai. "I came to you because I wanted to discuss if we could let a group of people enter the Sui Emperor's tomb first. But now, it seems like there's no need for that anymore." Yuchiobai smiled bitterly and asked, "What is going on?" "It's a long story. In short, there's no way to build a human city here. We have to find another place as soon as possible." "Teacher Yu, do you have any other suggestions?" Zhou said with a bitter smile. He didn't know that things would turn out this way. Sui Emperor's tomb had been destroyed, so all he could do was find another place. However, the ancient Sovereign Sutra could condense a Calamity grade domain, so the price was worth it. The only thing that left Zhou somewhat dissatisfied was that the Calamity grade domain of the ancient Sovereign Sutra was a domain similar to strengthening and healing. It didn't seem to have any offensive capabilities. Of course, Zhou had just condensed the Calamity grade domain, so he hadn't fully grasped it. He still needed time to familiarize himself with it. He took out his phone to take a look and realized that when he switched to the ancient Sovereign Sutra, there was indeed an additional Calamity grade domain. Human Emperor Sacrificial Heaven, Mortal grade. Why does the name of this domain have such an ominous feeling? I have a nickname called Human Emperor. This Human Emperor sacrificed to the heavens. Doesn't that mean I have to be sacrificed to the heavens? Zhou felt a little awkward when he saw the name of the domain. The name was given by the game system, so Zhou couldn't change it even if he wanted to. All he could do was silently accept it. There are indeed quite a number of dimensional zones near Guide City, but many of them are very strange. They aren't suitable for human habitation at all. Yuchiobai thought about it, but he couldn't seem to think of a suitable place. "Let's head back first." Zhou was also a local, so he naturally knew that Yuchiobai wasn't wrong at all. The dimensional zones near Guide City were indeed very strange. They didn't dare enter the ancient city. They couldn't enter Sui Huang's tomb in the past, and Butterfly Valley had many primordial crystal mines. However, according to the information Zhou knew, Butterfly Valley had a time limit. It was fine to enter Butterfly Valley at certain times, but there were times when one entered or didn't come out after a certain amount of time. The person who entered would never be found again. There were also some dimensional zones that had their own uniqueness. After all, there weren't many dimensional zones that were suitable for human habitation. In the present situation, we have to find a dimensional zone as soon as possible so that everyone can have a place to stay. With so many people squeezed near the school, something big will happen sooner or later. If it really doesn't work, we can only give it a try there. Yuchiobai said after some thought. Where? Zhouwen could tell that there were dimensional zones suitable for human habitation from Yuchiobai's words. Yuchiobai seemed somewhat hesitant, but he also knew that he had to think of a solution. Therefore, even though he had some concerns, he said, among the dimensional zones I previously investigated, there's one that might be able to accommodate a large number of humans. However, there's a problem with that dimensional zone. What's the problem? Zhouwen hurriedly asked. Since Yuchiobai had mentioned the dimensional zone, it meant that the problem wasn't unresolvable. Yuchiobai said, I've previously been to Great Purity Palace and Elder Lord Platform. Although Great Purity Palace is vast, there are too many mysterious things inside. It's not suitable for large numbers of humans to gather. Instead, the Elder Lord Platform Dimensional Zone is more suitable for humans to live in. However, there's something strange about it. The Elder Lord Platform that Yuchiobai mentioned was also known as the Immortal Ascension Platform. Legend had it that it was the place where Grand Supreme Elder ascended to immortality. After the dimensional storms, it had also become a dimensional zone. Speaking of the Elder Lord Platform, not only were there ancient myths and legends, but there were also some magical legends from relatively recent eras. Legend had it that when the Japanese army attacked Louis County City, which was also the county where Mount Elderlord was located, the county city was filled with low-tiled houses. There weren't any tall buildings. The most obvious building that could be seen from afar was the Elder Lord Platform. Before the attack, the Japanese army had first used mortars to bombard the county city. Furthermore, the most prominent Elder Lord Platform was the first target. However, after 13 consecutive bombardments, only the sound of cannonballs being fired was heard, but there were no explosions. By the time the Japanese army rushed into the city, the commoners had already safely retreated. There was no one in the city. Only when the Japanese army arrived in front of the Elder Lord Platform did they realize that it was the Immortal Ascension Platform of Grand Supreme Elder. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.